All right, ZBA, we are live. We are recording. Phone lines are opened. Go for it.
All right, thank you, man. Good evening, everyone. Welcome to the Town of East Hampton Zoning Board of Appeals meeting for May 20th, 2025. We have some public hearings this evening.
Morning somewhere.
I'll read the first one into the record. The applicant is James Brennan at 122 South Essex Street in Montauk, Suffolk County, tax map number 300-28-5-42. The size and location is 15,810.75 square feet at 122 South Essex Street, Montauk Beach Development Corp., Lot 12, Block 42, Subdivision Number 3, filed May 6, 1927 as map number 1013 in Montauk. The description is to demolish an existing 836 square foot residence within 100 foot of a wetland and construct a new 2,579 square foot two-story residence with roof terraces, swimming pool, patio, and IA sanitary system on a parcel within the jurisdiction of wetlands. The residence and pool are proposed 100.3 feet from the wetlands, and the sanitary system is proposed 151.2 feet from the wetlands. Relief sought is a natural resources special permit pursuant to 255-420 of the Town Code. The zoning district is A2 residence, Zone X flood zone, and the secret class is type 2. Council, do we have proper affidavit of service and posting?
Yes.
Thank you. Who's doing the report? Okay, Terry?
Okay, so this is well, there was a notice on the pole, and that is my car is in the driveway. The house to the left is actually the neighbor's house. The applicant's house is to the right. Next. I walked down to the southern side of the property, and this is the neighbor to the south side on the right. And you can see how the property grades down a bit there. And next, this is a shot up Essex, you get an idea of the terrain there. And next is a shot going down toward the south, toward the village hamlet of Montauk. Next. Now this is a shot of the front of the house that's going to be redone, taken down and replaced. And the current, on the project, it will be moving forward toward the street, but we're going to take a walk around the house. Next. And I just wanted to get a shot showing the proximity to the neighbor's house. Next. And now I took a shot from the driveway. A lot of the septic and the house is moving forward. And again, that's a view of the neighbor to the south in the background. Next. And down toward the back of the house, again, you can see how it grades down gradually. This is from the north side. And this is a deck, and the wetlands, most of the wetlands that are in question are in the far corner. They are on the east and south, mostly on the east. Next. And this is a shot across from the back there. And again, the house is moving forward, so it'll be positioned differently, and this deck will be gone. Next. And that, I'm taking that to be the shed that says it's going to be removed, even though it didn't look like a shed. And I'm not sure about the fencing, whose fencing that is, if it's on the property or... I don't see it. Actually, it looked like the shed was supposed to be off the property line, so I don't know if that is actually past the property line, that thing that's there. Next. Now I'm coming back down. I'm on the southeast side of the house and approaching, and you see the driveway of the neighbor to the south and the neighbor across the street. Next. Now I'm shooting across the house. The house will be from the south to the north. The house will be moving forward, and adjacent to some of that will be the pool will be set basically west to east on this property along the side yard. And the septic system will be in front. The driveway is being added, increased, and that might be it. Is that it? Oh, okay, that's just another shot of that front area again. Is that it? Good.
Thank you. Rick, this is you. Come on up, Rick. How are you?
Mr. Chairman. Good evening, members of the board, Mr. Chairman. Richard Whalen from Whalen Filer, PLLC. I represent the applicant, James Brennan, who's here tonight. He is the owner of the property with his wife, Christine. They have owned the property since 2006. The house was built in 1966, apparently. And Prudence Kwan, who's associated with West Chin Architects, is the architect. In case there are any questions on the building plans, she might be better to answer them than myself. So the application requires a natural resources special permit, no variances. It was originally considered for administrative review, but the two members of the board had requested a public hearing, so here's our public hearing. The applicants, as I said, have owned the property now for almost 20 years. They now want to spend more time on Montauk, so they want to replace what is a very, very small house. In fact, it's smaller than my house, so we know it's a small house. So the existing house, as shown on the photographs by Member Berger, is only 1 story. The new house will be a mixture of 1 and 2 stories. It will be forward on the property, forward of the existing house. The swimming pool is proposed on the south side of the new house. It will be equipped, obviously, with a new low nitrogen IS-OWTS system, and the applicants will revegetate in the back of the property, part of the back lawn. Backyard will be revegetated to the 50-foot wetland setback line. The house size, the house in GFA is proposed to be 2,579 square feet. As you know, applications that have been in before the board for a period of time are grandfathered from the new lower GFA rules. This not only would meet the prior GFA rules, but it actually meets the new lower GFA rules. So it's been in compliance even after July 1st with GFA. There are a number of benefits associated with the project. First of all, most of the existing house and decking are located within 100 feet of the wetlands. The wetlands, by the way, are not on the subject property. They are in the adjacent property to the rear, which is now townland, the former Bustamante property. So all new construction will be located 100 feet from the wetlands or more. Right now, lawn, there's also lawn area, lawn or yard that's within 50 feet of the adjacent wetlands. Revegetation, there's 1,237 square feet of proposed revegetation. That will bring the clearing boundary to the 50-foot wetland boundary. As I said, the applicant will be installing a new low nitrogen system. The improvements on the lot, when this project is done, all improvements, all structures will fully comply with all town zoning requirements. Yard setbacks, wetland setbacks, coverage, GFA, pyramid law, the whole lot. Everything will be fully compliant. And finally, the applicants will implement all of the recommended conditions in the planning department's TAM, technical assessment memo. Speaking of the TAM, the planning department TAM reads in part, generally as non-conforming lots are redeveloped, the town code encourages non-conformities to be eliminated or reduced to the greatest extent possible. As such, the applicant is proposing to construct the new residence 100 feet from the wetlands, the sanitary system more than 150 feet from the wetlands, and a 50-foot vegetated buffer to the eastern wetland, thereby removing all wetland setback nonconformities. Let me just address quickly compliance with the NRSP standards. The specific section of the code dealing with natural resources special permits, which is 255-5-51, subsections C and D are pertinent. With regard to C, compatibility with the chapter. The application fully complies with zoning. Even the nonconformities, such as the existing structural nonconformity to the wetlands and the clearing nonconformity, are being eliminated. As I said, meets all wetland, yard setbacks, and all other dimensional requirements of the zoning code. Preservation of natural resources, the code, the special permit standards require that all structures and uses shall be located on upland and shall be located so that no natural resource, feature, or system will be diminished in size, polluted, degraded, lost, or placed in peril of being lost. Everything is proposed to be built on upland. We're not building in wetlands. We're not building even in the 100-foot wetland buffer area. So everything is an upland area. Everything is, again, compliant. There's no physical diminishment of wetlands. And I just want to mention too, the property actually slopes away from the wetlands. The property tends to slope down towards Essex Street. And what's more, if you go to the back of the property, there's kind of an earthen berm that's on the town land just behind the backyard. So it's impossible for a runoff basically to reach the wetlands. And actually, Member Berger's question, when the town bought the adjacent, many of the lots on that side of Essex Street, they were encroaching into the Bustamante property. The neighbor to the north actually bought part of the property. The encroachment was so large, I think they bought part of it from Bustamante. It was actually delaying the town's purchase of that property. So the fence that you see is right on the property line. That was installed, I believe, by Bustamante in order to complete the closing. So they didn't have an encroachment. And my clients are not doing anything in the area behind that fence. That'll eventually revegetate, grow up naturally. There are general special permit standards. I'll just hit them very quickly. The nature of the use, the house and the pool are obviously allowed uses on this lot in a B residence zone. I've already stated they meet all town setback and coverage restrictions. The lot area is, the proposed structures are allowed on a lot of this size. Adjacent properties, of the 6 houses that are kind of in that node, right around the applicant's property, including 4 homes on the east side of Essex and 2 on the west side. The existing house owned by the applicants is clearly and substantially the smallest of them all right now. So increasing its size is not going to change the character of the neighborhood or will not affect the immediately adjacent properties. It's compatible with the neighboring properties, buffering and screening. The swimming pool is proposed to be vegetated landscape so that it won't be visible from Essex Street. And of course, in terms of buffering in the back, there'll be revegetation to buffer the applicant's property and to basically turn some of the back lawn into natural vegetation to protect the wetlands. Runoff and waste, as I said, we're using low nitrogen IA system for septic capture. And I also noted that the property does slope away from the wetlands for what it's worth. So again, all the proposed structures meet the applicable wetland setbacks and all other setbacks. The house and deck that currently exist on the property that don't meet the wetland setbacks will be removed. A low nitrogen septic system will replace whatever was put in the ground in 1966. And I think that's pretty much it. I think the application meets all the standards for issuance of a natural resources special permit.
Board members have any questions?
Yeah, well, first of all, you said Zone B? It says A2
I believe it's
on
in
the
B
TAM. It
residence.
says A2 on the
A2.
TAM.
Sorry,
On
excuse
the
me?
TAM, it says A2.
A2?
Yeah.
No, I'll admit I didn't double check that. I'd be really surprised if that's in the A2 zone though. I didn't double check it. It's subject to B zone setbacks, but I would be quite surprised if that's zone A2. But the planning department, I guess, can speak to that.
Okay. Yeah, I'm concerned about the pool mostly. Well, Essex Street, you're familiar with Montauk, Essex Street and everything going around the golf course, where there are pools that exist, but none of them are really near the street side. And I know this is not in the front of the house, but part of it actually is. So this vegetation they're going to put in here, this will be.
Yeah, they're going to landscape in, when I say in front, I mean on the street side of the swimming pool. As I understand, the landscaping is supposed to be such that you won't even know there's a pool there.
Okay, and also there's some protection from the neighbor to the south, that you know how close that property line is.
The pool is 20-foot setback from the neighbor to the south, which is double the accessory structure setback, so it's compliant.
And speaking to that, it's exactly 20 feet. And does that include the coping? It looks on the
Yes.
survey like there's some coping.
Yeah, I believe so.
So it's the coping that would be the 20 feet. And that leaves you no room for a mistake.
Yeah, it's the measurement. There's very, very narrow coping on that side. But the coping is shown as 20 feet from the side property lines, and the swimming pool's another, foot or two.
Where's the pool equipment going? And maybe I missed it on the survey. It's just on the phone.
That may be on the plan. I don't know, maybe.
Is it on the plan?
The pool equipment is proposed to go under the stairs that are on the, you can see the stairs on the kind of the
Proposed patio there.
southwest area.
Okay,
The proposed patio?
Going
Oh, no,
away.
that patio's going away. This front one, under these
Right,
stairs.
there are stairs there.
yeah, okay. Thank you, Rick.
Okay.
This one.
Yeah, okay. Thank
Okay.
you. Thank you, Rick.
Rick, do we have a revegetation plan? I haven't seen one, but is there one?
Or planting plan in general.
Planting plan?
Plan yet.
The
I mean, I'm
revegetation
look-
plan is, I hadn't looked at the building plan
I
before today.
can't find one. I just wondered
I
if
didn't
there
see one in
was
the
one.
file.
I didn't see one.
No, maybe.
Because what I'm actually looking at is, the existing clearing is 15,426. The proposed is 14,189, and the max allowed is 11,858. So that's really one of my issues, is the clearing.
Yes.
Is there any way we can remediate that with additional
Well,
revegetation?
So the allowed clearing of the property, the whole property is cleared 100%, and the planning department or natural resource department confirmed that. So we are going to now comply with the wetland setbacks. I guess I misspoke in one respect, and that is that the property won't be fully compliant with clearing. I don't think we're proposing to go beyond that. I mean, we are becoming more compliant, both in terms of overall clearing, and we're becoming compliant in terms of clearing to the wetlands.
So the proposed 14,189 of clearing is going to remain the same?
The
When the
clearing,
max
hold on,
allowed.
let me see, the existing clearing on the property, because the survey that I have does not have revised calculations. The clearing that's shown on the survey is over 15,000 square feet.
426.
I'm looking at
Yeah.
the TAM, actually. The existing is 15,426. Clearing permitted is 11,858. And I'm just asking, is there any way to, are you amenable to a more
Yeah.
revegetation?
I would have the same question.
Yeah.
I think we're going to stick with what we're proposing, which brings the clearing down into the 14,000 range. If you look at most of the lots in that area of Montauk, the improved lots are mostly cleared. And 120 years ago, they were all cleared.
Okay, well, another question about
But I would
that.
just to finish, Member Fitzmaurice's question, the planting plan is indicated on drawing A100. And yeah, it's kind of hard to read, but if you look up on the north, on the kind of the upper corner of the drawing, it talks about what the proposed plantings will be, and they consist of northern bayberry and northern arrowwood. And it's planting, the sizes and spacing are indicated. Kind of hard to read, but it's up at the.
What's the date on that? It looks like I have
Okay, okay. Yes, yes, yes.
A100.
A100.
Yeah, whatever.
A100 is this one, right? So it
Well,
says
there's
up
two
here.
A100s.
Yeah, I'm looking at this A100.
Oh, I see, okay.
The revegetation plan.
It's the one down there, not this.
At the very top.
Yeah, I see that.
It's the A100 that's not in the attached part.
The drawing I'm referring to, because apparently they don't have it, the drawing I'm referring to is
I have,
dated 9/20/24. Do you have that date?
That's this
Yes.
little thing, yeah.
Yeah, there was an earlier
Oh, it's a
one
different
sent
one,
in with
yeah.
the packet, but, okay,
A100 9/20/24.
got that one.
This is your drawing, right?
correct.
Now, Rick, one more thing. Does that not include the screening from the pool, for the pool? That would be additional?
Well, that wouldn't be, you're asking for screening, that wouldn't be revegetation.
Veg.
Right, the screening would be just landscaping. That doesn't count towards our re-veg.
Yeah,
Wouldn't it impact clearly?
Thank you, Rick.
Okay,
Thank you.
all right, thank you. I think Mr. Brennan was saying something.
Come on up, Mr. Brennan. Can you just announce your name, and I'll have to swear you in?
Sure. James Brennan.
You swear affirm to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
Absolutely. Thank you. Thanks for having me. Just a quick couple sentences about me. My wife and I wrote this, so I have to read it. Okay. So this plan began with the dream over 20 years ago to own and eventually move to Montauk. My wife and I, we met in Napeague. We got engaged in Lazy Point. We got married at Camp Hero. We absolutely love Montauk. As you can imagine, our kids work at Montauk Downs. He'll be shagging, my son will be shagging balls all summer at the driving range. My daughter works at Pathfinder Day Camp and will work there all summer. We're part of the community as it has. We've been spending every summer here for the last 2 decades. And this is our chance. So that's what I'm putting out there. We worked hand in hand with the planning department. Of course, I wanted to push back. I wanted to do other things. You know, thank you, Tyler. Thank you. Thanks, Morgan, you know, for all the guidance we got through. We invested in a design that's relatively modest. We didn't come in here like trying to blow something out so that we could do it. We wanted to just get what we hoped and we dreamt that we could have, and we hope you see it that way. Pledge that the landscaping, those plants in the front of the house, they're native plants. You know, we care about the environment. We care, we have a riparian buffer that we're going to do. Whatever plants that need to be planted there, we will. Woody, we're not going to make it a place where we're going to go and play. We're going to put that great nitrogen, protect Fort Pond. It's a place that I love dearly. You know, we hope we grant, this is my close here, we hope you grant the NRSP that we have worked so hard on. Our dream is to retire full-time to Montauk and become even more entwined in the community of East Hampton. We tried very hard to do everything by the rules, and we hope you see it that way too. Thank you. Thanks for the consideration.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Brennan.
Morgan, is this yours?
Good evening, Board. Morgan Slater for the Planning Department.
Morgan, do you swear affirm to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do. And I want to start off noting that the zoning is B residence. That was a typo on the TAM, and I apologize for that misunderstanding. So this property is within the Montauk Beach Development Subdivision, and that predates modern wetland setbacks, which resulted in a lot of properties and residents that do not conform to minimum wetland setbacks, which is the case for this property. The existing 836 square foot residence on it is 75 feet from the wetland to the east. There's also a wetland to the southwest of the property and across South Essex Street, which the western side of the property is within the jurisdiction of. These wetlands contribute to an interconnected system of freshwater wetlands that exist throughout this part of Montauk, and they flow toward the surface waters of Fort Pond. Despite being surrounded by developed properties, these wetlands provide many benefits to the surrounding area, such as floodwater retention and a habitat for wetland-dependent wildlife. The gross floor area of the new residence is supposed to be about 2,600 square feet with a 515 square foot pool, attached garage, patios, and roof terraces. All proposed structures conform to minimum wetland setbacks, and there is a proposed revegetation of about 1,200 square feet that's to be in the southeast corner of the property to act as a 50-foot wetland buffer. The property has pre-existing non-conforming clearing, and the current clearing edge is about 15 feet from the edge of wetland. So the proposed revegetation is an improvement to the environmental conditions to the property, and the 50-foot is a quantity that was recommended by our department to the applicant. The sanitary system's wetland setback is also increasing. It is currently 109 feet from the wetland, and it's going to be 151 feet. And that is also an improvement to the environmental conditions of the property, although it should be kept in mind that it is required in this case. And besides that, I can answer any questions that the board may have about the application.
Does anybody have any questions for Morgan?
Just that the re-veg plan will be subject to approval upon
Right.
conditioned upon.
In very small font, it is noted that the proposed species are bayberry and arrowwood, which are native woody species that, you know, are found around our freshwater wetlands and their buffers. So we're satisfied with the proposal.
Any other questions?
No.
No.
Is there anybody in the public would like to address this application? Not, is there anybody online?
You have 0 callers. Thank you.
Thank you. Can we have a motion?
So in the application of James Brennan at 122 South Essex Street in Montauk, tax map 300-28-5-42, make a motion to close the public hearing and the public record.
I'll second it.
Oh,
Concur.
concur.
Thank you. Thank you. Next, we have Susan Lehman at 7 Outlook Avenue in Spring, Suffolk, tax map number 300-57-4-7. The size and location is 11,357 square feet at 7 Outlook Avenue in Springs. The description is to legalize an existing floating dock and to construct a 1,606 square foot two-story residence, 262 square foot deck, approximately 925 square foot patio, IA system, and to utilize an existing 324 square foot fisherman's cottage as an accessory structure with plumbing on a parcel of land containing a bluff and tidal wetlands. Relief sought is a natural resources special permit pursuant to 255-420 of the town code. The zoning district is B residence, X flood zone, AE7, and the seeker class is type 2. Council, do we have proper affidavit of service and posting? Thank you. Vice Chair, I think this is you.
This is me. Okay, as shown on the screen, the property was properly posted. Next, please. This is the fisherman's cottage. Next to it are non-conforming structures that, if I understand this correctly, from what I received today, I think they are going to be removed. So this is just a picture of the fisherman's cottage. Next, please. I'm now walking toward 3 Mile Harbor. Next. I'm actually standing on Outlook here, and this is a very narrow lot. So you're going to, this is actually the area where they're going to be putting the new residence. Next, please. This is obviously the staircase leading down to the dock in question. Next, please. I just took another picture of this to indicate, it looks like it was just constructed. The wood is new. It was newly constructed. This hasn't been, I don't know when this was done, but this is where the configuration of the dock changed from a T to an L. Next, please. This is just a picture of, I was trying to actually get a shot of the pre-existing rail tracks that run all the way up the side of the property. It's kind of hard to see in the photo. Next, please. This is a picture of the, it's a pre-existing concrete platform. I also think this is going to be removed, and it obviously is being used as a patio. Next, please. This is just me walking back up to Outlook and looking at the fisherman's cottage from the 3 Mile Harbor side. Next, please. This is also a pre-existing wood platform. You can kind of tell here, though, this isn't a harbor protection overlay district, and the property does slope down, so I'm sure runoff here is important in terms of going into 3 Mile. But I also think, from what I received today or looked at, I think this wood platform is going to be removed as well. Next, please. All right, thank you, Morgan.
Thank you. Mr. Come on up.
How are you?
How are you?
Good. Alex Crewley, 22 Grove Street, New York, New York. I'm here on behalf of the applicant, Susan Lehman. We also have Andy Goldstein with us if there are legal questions.
Do you swear affirm to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Thank you.
So, hi, I'm the architect on this project. I want to start by thanking Morgan and the planning department for working with us over the last year and for their thorough review of this project. I also want to say that we're on board with almost all of their recommended conditions. We have no objection to the suggested covenants and restrictions or the easement. I'd like to, great. I can pass out a hard copy of what's on the screen. It's a diagram that explains the layout, if that's helpful for the board members.
She needs a copy to sign in.
Yeah, we got that in to the file today, but I don't have a hard copy. I don't have a hard copy of it yet.
There's nothing materially different here. I just wanted to put a diagram together as to help me talk you through it. So our proposal is for a 1,600 square foot, 1-bedroom residence to be built on the site. The site is encumbered by a variety of setbacks and restrictions. There is wetlands and bluff crest, which have been flagged on the site. The existing structure is within the wetland setback, as is its sewage system. The new structure is outside of the wetland structure setback, but within the 150-foot wetlands jurisdiction. We are proposing a house that's quite small at 1,600 square feet. We're at about half the lot coverage and building coverage that are allowable on this site. And by keeping the house small and being respectful of the context, our neighbors, the natural landscape, we believe that this proposal is what's most conscientious for the site. You'll notice that not only are we set back from the wetland structure setback, but we're significantly set back from the two neighbors north and south, which appear in gray on this diagram, which are within our pre-existing non-conforming, of course, but most of the houses on Outlook Ave try to crowd the water as much as they can. We're stepping way back of that. We are also proposing to eliminate 5 existing nonconformities. Board Member Savarese mentioned a couple of them. The 2 platforms that sit within the wetlands, the wood platform and the concrete platform, are both proposed to be removed. There are also 2 structures in the side yard setback next to the existing fisherman's cottage. Those are also proposed to be removed. And of course, the sanitary system of the existing building, which is we don't actually know how old it is, quite old. It's just a CMU block tank. We're going to replace that with the new upgraded IA system. We are fully compliant with all building and zoning codes for the new construction. There are no variances required. This was a specific request at the outset by the owner. We are compliant with pyramid, all setbacks, under on coverage, GFA, all of those things, as I mentioned. So really, we're only here before you because we are disturbing the site within the 150-foot jurisdiction, and thus we need the NRSP. I just wanted to speak briefly about the cottage. The cottage does have existing nonconformities in its location relative to wetlands and to the side yard. However, it is an entirely legal structure which predates zoning. It has not, to our knowledge, is certainly not now, and we never intended to be a residence. It is 324 square feet. There is no kitchen. There is no shower. For the current owner, it is a place to read, to write, to have a coffee, to relax after being on the water. We're not proposing any work to that structure that would require a permit. There's only maintenance work being proposed to it, which is replacing the shingles. And we propose to keep all of the pre-existing plumbing and to tie it into the new sanitary system. So in the interest of facilitating the NRSP that's required for the new construction, we're happy to agree to the covenants proposed by both the planning and the building departments to restrict the plumbing there to what is currently existing, and also to eliminate any future potential of a kitchen so that the cottage stays exactly as it is. We believe that this proposal is best for the owner, the neighborhood, and the site. And in lieu of a large development, in lieu of expanding existing nonconformities, we propose to keep the dock and the cottage exactly as is and build the new code compliant and contextually sensitive house.
So, I mean, in 1983, the dock as seen on the aerial was a T. Why and when did you convert it to an L?
We did not convert it.
So previous.
It was a previous owner. The current owner, Susan Lehman, bought the property in 2022. Other than doing repairs to some of the deteriorating wood steps, no changes have been made to the dock. And we actually didn't realize that the dock was not a formally legally recognized dock until we went for this NRSP. Permission was filed with the town trustees to put the dock in the water seasonally, and that permission was received, and it was in the planning department's review of our application that it was identified that it hadn't come to the town for an NRSP.
So when did the property owner buy the property?
2022.
2022. And at that point, I mean, what was the reason? So you had nothing happen in terms of, because don't you lose the status of pre-existing non-conforming if you, I mean, originally it was a T dock and it was converted into an L. Wouldn't you lose the
If it's by a
pre-existing
previous owner,
non-conforming status? Yeah, it runs with the land. It doesn't matter who owns the property.
I think
I'm
that,
not sure.
one of the reasons is they're asking for
Because it's a shallow,
legalization of the
very
present
shallow.
dock, whether, I think the point that, council, you can agree with me or not, tell me if I'm right or wrong, but it's to legalize the dock.
Mhm.
That's simply before what it is. It was a T shape. We see that. And it did get changed, but it got changed at some point.
It's very shallow in here too.
Yeah.
I mean, the whole bottomlands thing doesn't even reach
it is
3 feet below mean low water,
Yeah.
and that's 255, 551. Doesn't even meet that standard.
if you look at most of those properties have docks in the same shallow water. They actually most of them have docks that are much more significant than this one, which is a floating dock that comes in and out. We can't, of course, change the depth of the water, but the property owner was unaware that it was not legal when the property was purchased, and so now we're here trying to legalize it with you. We have made no material changes to that dock.
Well, we got a letter into the file today from the trustees. Did you see that?
I did not see that.
Okay. I mean, I have to read it in more depth, but I think, tell me if I'm getting this right, that there seem to be some discrepancies between the measurements that they have on record versus what's there. So I would have to ask council how we deal with that now, but there's a letter in the file from the trustees. It came in.
Didn't see it this morning, but.
Yeah, it came in this afternoon, I think.
Okay. Just so I'm clear, the discrepancies are between our survey and what the trustees have on file with their bathymetric readings, or?
I don't know if it was so much the depths or as opposed to the dimensions of, forgive me, I didn't print it out because
They're giving the dimensions of the platform, ramp, and floating sections.
You have an extra copy?
Can I give you, would you like my copy? Because I certainly have access to another copy. But you might want to look at.
It wouldn't surprise me that the dimensions are different if this dock was never legalized, so I would say that.
Thank you.
That was my other question.
Okay. Can I go back to the cottage accessory structure? So obviously the TAM starts to go into some of how unique this is to not, to have something with plumbing that doesn't meet a 200 square foot pool house, or it's not a ADU and it's not an artist studio. So what is the purpose of keeping the plumbing in the structure?
It's there, and we don't want to tear it out if we don't have to. My understanding of those restrictions are that they are in place to prevent habitation.
Right.
And you really can inhabit that. This owner does not. I would think most people do not, and we are willing to grant all of the covenants and restrictions that both the planning department and the building department have asked for in order to keep the plumbing and to avoid the need for a variance. So I think most any homeowner, if they have a sink and a toilet in a small structure like that, would probably want to keep them.
So is it conditioned space or no? The reason I'm just asking is because.
Is it air conditioned?
Okay. The reason I'm asking is because it's a 1-bedroom house and, sorry?
The new house.
No, the new house you said is a 1-bedroom house, correct? Yeah. So, when you have a sink and a toilet, I guess you're going to covenant, but it could be a place that could serve as a guest room. And I don't think we have detached bedrooms in this
Yeah, no, and that's not the intention of this proposal. It's used for the dock, for the water, being on a boat, coming off the boat. That is its purpose now, and we propose that that remain its
I think the
use.
concern there, will the covenant restrict the use of bedroom or living or in the cottage? It's just strictly an accessory structure with plumbing.
With plumbing, that we keep the plumbing as it is.
Then it doesn't meet the definition of accessory structure as it's defined in the code. I'm not saying I have an answer right now. I'm working through the issues. Yeah.
No expansion of the plumbing, and in addition to no kitchen, would you be agreeable that it not be a bedroom as an additional, I mean, we're talking about recording a restrictive covenant anyway, so I think that would capture
I
it.
think that's a
Right, I
concern.
think,
Is that addressing it? That might
I
be
think
the way
that it
to-
not be a bedroom.
Right,
Yes, that's correct.
yeah, that it not be a bedroom, perhaps adding that into the restrictive covenant language, kind of all covered.
Right.
My name is Andrew Goldstein. What if we were to covenant that it will not be separately rented?
Can't hear you.
What if we were to covenant that it will not be separately rented?
I don't think.
But is there, but
I mean, when you say not a bedroom, it's.
what is the structure's purpose? And I think that's what needs to be clear to us.
It's meant to be like a summer house, like the English have in their gardens. If you look, it's just meant to be a place you can sit. That's what it is. It's a place that you can sit. It's also, I just want to add, we're not applying for anything with regard to that cottage.
But there are specific rules, there's specific codes in the code defining accessory structures. Either it's an accessory structure without plumbing or it's a pool house with plumbing. What is this?
Well, it's a pre-existing non-conforming structure that was never used as a for living, which has plumbing.
But it never even had a C of O on it. There's no,
Well, it's been there it's been there forever, as it were.
But at that time, it was the only structure on the property.
right, it was
It's an
dwelling.
anomaly.
So then it could be, arguably the main structure because it was the only structure there. Now you're looking to build a primary residence on the dwelling. So this then, as per the code, becomes an accessory structure.
Right.
But it's
And
not.
that's why.
And the notice is specifically saying that to utilize an existing 324 square foot fisherman's cottage as an accessory structure with plumbing.
Right.
Bottom line. It
Right.
doesn't say it's to be used for sleeping.
If you want a
bedroom or
covenant that
anything
says it
like
will not
that.
be used as a bedroom, well, that will be included in the covenant.
How do we enforce that?
I mean,
Right now it has a toilet and a sink.
Did have multiple conversations with
kitchen
both
Like a
Joe
kitchen
Palermo in
concept.
his previous tenure and also Morgan and Brian at the planning department about this issue and whether there would be variances required since this is a somewhat unique proposal. We heard from both of them that they did not think that was necessary, and we are willing to covenant that we're willing to add that additional restriction to the covenant. That is not the intention here. The intention is to keep using it the way it's being used. And the reason we're doing that is so that we don't have to disturb the site and that we can build a fully code compliant new structure further into the site.
But right now, the way it's being used today, it looked like a little powder room and sort of kitchen-y. There was a little refrigerator and.
Right.
There's a wet bar.
And-
It's for sodas and water. Yeah.
Right, but that's usually.
It does not have any cooking facilities whatsoever, which it's my understanding that means that it is not a kitchen. Meals are not made there. It's a mini fridge.
I mean, just following up on what our council said, right, the survey, it refers to that 324-foot structure as an existing dwelling. Like that,
I asked.
I'm going by.
I thought that might come up, and I asked the surveyor about that, and he said that he wanted to call it that because it's the only structure on the property, and so therefore he couldn't just call it a structure. He wanted to call it a dwelling. I had that conversation with him. I was clear that it is not a dwelling, but he said by his surveying capacity, he wanted to label it that way.
So then that's as it exists today? and I'm reason, but so when you go for your C of O, will that designation change? Because now you're in this process, you're going for an accessory structure.
Correct.
So it
in the
shouldn't
new,
say a cottage at the completion, is that?
so at the completion, I would argue that it is a one-bedroom dwelling, the new construction, with an accessory structure, and that the existing plumbing is allowed per the recommendation of the planning and building departments, and it is covenanted that we put in no more plumbing and we put in no kitchen.
I'm just reading the definition of accessory structure right in the code, and that's where I'm getting a little stuck.
But
Yeah.
it's pre-existing non-conforming as to what it is. It predates the code. It's a pre-existing non-conforming one-room building with plumbing. I call it an accessory
Right.
building with plumbing, that's fine. But it's pre-existing non-conforming.
Correct.
So the code, what you're allowed to do today with an accessory building doesn't necessarily apply to this because it predates the code.
But it was the only structure on the property before, right?
Yeah, but I mean, that's the circumstance. Can't do anything about that.
We can hear from the planning department on this as well.
But now it has the potential for two residents.
Yeah.
I mean, I think the concern, I understand what you just said, but now with what you're asking for, this does have the potential to become two residences. How do you enforce?
Well,
But if you don't have a kitchen or a shower, how is that a residence?
Let's back up.
324
Let's
square
back up. Let's back up a little bit. On the accessory structure, looking at alone as it stands today, as an accessory structure, does it meet the setbacks for this property?
No.
So it's non-conforming.
Yes.
So by doing this, are you increasing a non-conformity?
We are not.
no,
There's no work proposed to this other than the maintenance work.
But it sounds like this is going to be a legal issue, I think, a legal question, because if you're proposing it to be livable space,
It already is livable space, no?
are you increasing a nonconformity with making it
Well, if
almost
it's
like
livable, then it should be
an
counted.
accessory structure? Is it part of the, this is very unique for us, so we have to
Yeah,
flesh
so we're
this out.
just flush-
Could you just define what you mean by livable space? Because I understand the purpose of the covenants and restrictions to mean that this structure as it exists today, whatever you want to call it, materially remains exactly the same for this homeowner. So nothing's changed.
Just want to clarify, so the covenant will say it won't be a bedroom or something like that? Oh, fine. I think that covers it, I think.
But there's no further plumbing, there's no bedroom
Right.
and no kitchen.
Right.
I think that then makes it non-livable space.
It's in
So
the-
I kind of disagree with you that you're saying it's livable now and it will be livable.
what do you mean by
then.
livable?
It's not livable.
What do you mean by
Well,
livable?
Mr. Gurley used that phrase.
What is the, and I'm not asking this to be,
Habitable.
I don't know what that
could
term
live in
means in the code. What makes it livable
With all due
space?
respect, there are people that live in cartons. I mean, so this is not an intention of this property owner to
It's
do
just a little
anything.
confusing because it does say existing dwelling
Yes.
on the survey.
Yes.
First and foremost, I understand that that was a disagreement with the surveyor and you explained that. So we could put that aside, but that has led to a little bit of confusion with respect to the use. And respectfully, I'm going to differ with you on that nothing is changing here. Something huge is changing here.
Right.
It's now going to have a main house on the dwelling, and then this is going to become an accessory building. Whereas this fisherman's cottage had been the main structure on this for however many years that there was a fisherman's cottage.
So I think, yeah, that's exactly right, that a principal structure is becoming an accessory structure.
I agree with that.
Yeah.
It is a non-conforming building. That's what it is under the zoning code.
Correct, we understand, I get that.
That we understand.
Nothing changing in the dimensional aspects of this building and its relation to the property. So there's no nonconformity being increased. No, there's no work being done to it except to change the site.
Right, and I'm just saying that definition of an accessory structure, if that's what it's being called, cannot have a bed in it, cannot be used for sleeping. Is that
It
correct?
also can't have plumbing, it can't have plumbing in it.
I mean, I
unless
can't
it's a
guarantee
pool
that
house.
someone won't eventually take a nap there, but I mean, I don't think that it's not an intention. First,
I mean, there is,
the applicant does not intend to violate the law. And we're putting all sorts of covenants on this building to ensure that anyone who she sells the property to is put on notice to that effect. This is, it's a building within the grand scheme of this entire development, nothing's happening to it.
I think that, again, I'm just going to reiterate that this is unique for this board, so this line of questioning is paramount to us. And I think getting this straight is paramount to us. So getting the definition, just understanding what the covenant is going to do is important, so.
We'll pass it by.
Yeah.
I mean, there's a solution, which is to remove the plumbing.
Accessory structure.
You could, I mean,
I think that's, where was your question?
No, I say it has to be defined as an accessory structure.
but it can't be.
Well, that's
It
what
can't
I
be.
think. I
Right,
think
it
that
has to
at the
be
end of the
that,
day, it can't be called a
and then
cottage.
what?
That's
And
the
if
end of the
we're going
day.
to allow
that
some
sort of gives it
plumbing,
a
that
whole
would be a
other-
It
variance.
has to be called an accessory structure because that's the notice
It
that's
is.
before
It has
us.
to
Correct.
But under our code, it
Right,
can't
so
be called
that's-
an accessory structure because it doesn't fit the definition.
Presently, it does, but that's got to
Okay,
change.
but wait, a variance could be given to the accessory structure to keep plumbing?
Morgan,
A possibility, it has to be an accessory structure.
our understanding from the building and planning departments was that there was no variance required.
Excuse me.
Yeah, so that,
I just have to say, this building, the plumbing has existed in this building since prior to the code. I just don't believe that you can now say that you need a variance for that. Because this non-conforming building doesn't fit within your square corners of the definition of an accessory building under the code.
But it can't be an
It
accessory
wasn't- it
structure
was a-
with the plumbing.
Well,
No accessory,
but not square feet.
That's what the relief they're before us on. Let's just get that.
Right, that's what they're asking
They're
for.
here seeking that relief, and that's
then
what they're
that
seeking.
requires a variance, right? Which is not how it's noticed. I think that's also kind of what we're
They're
struggling
asking
with.
for.
I'm sorry, Mr. Goldman, that
remain
was
as with plumbing. That's part of the notice.
too loud, okay.
All right. Any other questions? Should we turn this over to
The
planning?
board with regard to the dock. What, the trustees say that the dock is a different size in their records. Do you want us to conform the dock to what's in the trustees' records? I mean, I sort of don't want to leave that out there hanging. I want,
No, we shouldn't leave it either because it says in their final,
Like I just- they're looking
paragraph, it says, please note the deck agreement holder will be receiving a letter from the trustees notifying them that the current structure are incongruent with our records. This may or may not be indicative of an expansion of what has existed on these premises. The trustees plan to grant the application 6 months to submit an application to reconcile any inconsistency. So that's an issue.
so, well, the applicant will conform the dock to what the trustees want in this letter. And I guess we would like to consider the legalization of the dock in conformity with the trustees.
So in order to, counsel, I'm going to ask you, is then do we pull the dock from this application? Because if they're going to make changes or have to make changes, or if this is an issue, do we pull this from the application now
Well,
and deal with the lot? That's what I think we have to look at.
That's one way to proceed, otherwise to just continue and keep open the record until we get further clarification from the
right.
trustees.
Exactly.
Because I felt like we didn't get to the end of their inquiry.
Correct. No, we're not
Right.
there.
We're not there yet. So I assumed maybe continued and kept open until we get a
I would-
follow-up from them.
I would agree with that.
Yeah,
what follow-up are you,
based on their letter, they said they're going to grant you 6 months to reconcile it.
Okay, so my,
That this may or may not be indicative of an expansion of what existed on the premises. So I was stuck on that sentence.
well, what we're happy to make it smaller.
Whether or not it's
No, I know, but how do we proceed?
Well, if we make it smaller, it's covered by the notice. If you want to say legalize a dock as per these dimensions,
I wouldn't want to
wouldn't,
say that
no.
without actually looking at what they're asking for here.
well,
I mean, the property owner has permission from the trustees for this dock, so there's something I would think screwy here if they gave her permission for the dock and now are identifying that their records actually aren't clear on dimension of the dock that they have permitted. So I don't know how that relates to this board, but it seems like another issue that.
Well, it does affect this board and the fact that you're asking for legalization of it.
No, I didn't say that meaning dismiss it. I said, I don't know how we handle the issue you're talking about.
Right, so either, I think she's saying you can leave the record open until the trustees make a determination on this, or
Take it out.
pull it away from this application and deal with the house itself. That's a decision you have to make.
well, let me ask you, does anyone know exactly how much bigger the dock is than these?
They
I
don't
think
know.
they're saying these are the existing dimensions.
They're saying they
They
don't.
say these are the dimensions
Yeah.
that they're okay with.
No, I think they're saying that,
that's what they have of record.
That's what they have on record, is the size you're looking
And
at.
I think as the council said, I think it's key to say you may or may not have a problem here. They don't know yet. We have to see how far it goes with their investigation.
Dock out of the application if it's going to.
so regardless, if you're going to change it, say you're going to change it to these dimensions, then you have to initiate an application with the trustees, and you have to change note, you have to go before an NRSP for that to get that work done, I would think.
Well, we're asking, in other words, actually,
So you just can't,
arguably, the NRSP contains permission to remove structures that are necessary to accomplish the purposes of the NRSP. I don't think you have to specifically ask for that.
right, but the primary application that we have before us with the house is beyond setbacks. We're not asking for variances. This is a structure that's within wetlands and coastline waterways and stuff like that. So I think that that's going to be a whole different, we'll hear that from the planning department, but I think that's going to require a separate NRSP to perform that work.
Just to change the, well, we have
Yeah.
a dock. There is a pre-existing non-conforming dock somewhere in this.
Yeah, but there has to be drawings, there has to be a method, a means and methods of how to do that that's acceptable to the town and the trustees, I would think.
Well, any approval you give is going to be subject to the trustees approving the dock. And we can't, we have to apply to the trustees for the dock. So, I mean, you could theoretically approve, consider this an application for a smaller dock because it comes within the terms of the notice.
Okay, we'll take counsel, we'll take advice on that one.
I feel like there's a lack of clarity right now.
I do too.
That I would suggest that we get an adjournment and a
yes,
continuance with
yes.
the record open to
Yep.
get more clarity within the next couple of weeks, 30 days, and then kind of be able to make a decision based on all the information. So
I agree with that.
An adjournment for, how long did you say?
Keep the record open
For 30 days.
For
30 days to get more clarification from the trustees.
So that we're all looking at the
Okay.
same dimensions.
Yep, I mean, the only thing I'll say is that, and I know that there is a substantial queue, but we did apply for this a year ago and we're looking forward to this hearing. And it's unfortunate that the trustees sent a letter in the day of the hearing with no time for us to look at this. So as expeditiously as we can solve this matter, we will endeavor.
We're
to
all
do so.
for expeditious, but that's why we're giving you 30 days instead of 6 months at
Well,
the
well,
6 months at the rest.
30 days would be great.
If we're leaving
So-
this open, we're going to
If
pick a
we
date
adjourn it
tonight.
to a date certain on the
Yes,
record,
yes.
then that will alleviate the
That'll be
renotice
continuing.
issue, right? Because we're putting it out that we're
Putting it out,
giving them a
yes.
date certain.
I mean, we schedule it
Yeah,
tonight
if you
for the
say
next,
this is
yes,
being
then you don't
adjourned
have to
for 30 days
renotice,
to
exactly.
Such and such a
It's a
date.
continuation.
That's just if the
yes.
board wants to
Continuation.
proceed that way. I don't have the schedule, so.
No,
someone would
but
have to-
Samantha does.
So someone would have to say
Then they
what
won't
that
have to
date is.
renotice. Well,
Council, are you
haven't heard
saying
from-
the hearing and the record,
Everything.
or?
Yeah.
I'm saying everything.
Yeah.
Okay,
Everything.
all right.
I
Saying
think that's a good
So
idea.
Sam, what's the schedule look like?
So we usually have to have the notice prepared, at least 2 or 3 weeks ahead of the hearing. And if that is something that is if the notice needs to be changed, I don't know if 30 days is reasonable unless we have the answers within like 2
Well, we're going to
weeks from now.
continue
You know
it.
what I mean?
So
You don't
if we
have to change it.
continue it, it
A
doesn't have to be
continuation.
renoticed, is it? That's
Well,
Or
is that,
it-
does it, will
except
it need
this
to be
is a little
renoticed?
crazy.
That's a question, that's a legal
I
question.
thought with a continuation, if you picked a date,
Right now is that this dock, right, accessory structures were listed to legalize an existing floating dock. So verifying how large that is and what records the trustees have, I'm not sure that that's going to impact the legal per se,
Okay.
because it's already on there to legalize the existing floating dock. So I think that that's probably okay.
Okay.
I do take your point. If
Right.
a new variance were to come up, that would have to be renoticed.
Well, if the trustees authorize this dock, we're fine.
The what?
The trustees
If they do.
apply for this
Yeah.
dock, with the trustees, we'll be fine.
Well,
We're waiting to hear what
figure it out.
well, we'll say.
that's, but I think we have to clarify that, and I think, yeah.
are we going to hear from
All right,
Morgan?
are we good with that? Can we hear from the
Can we hear
planning
from
department?
Okay,
June 24th?
June
All right,
24th.
we'll keep
Okay,
that,
but we
we'll
can
wait
hear
till
from
Morgan's done.
Morgan, right?
Hi, Morgan.
Good evening again, board. I'm not sure I'm going to go into the whole spiel because there's going to be a continuation with the hearing. I will address some, a couple of things that just came up tonight and maybe we'll open up some discussion and we can get some clarification on it. With regard to the accessory structure, as it's labeled on the survey, I want to suggest, could it be considered an accessory structure right now without no principal? And could it be non-conforming in that sense? Because due to the size of it, it is not large enough to be a residence, which the minimum square footage of a residence would be 600 square feet. And also the lack of livable space within it. It just has a sink and a toilet right now and no functioning kitchen facilities. So in that sense, the use or the purpose of the structure wouldn't necessarily be changing. And again, I'm not saying that as fact, I'm kind of just opening that up for discussion. And regarding also the dock, I think another, there is an image, an aerial image from 1983 of a T-shaped dock, and that's in the board's record to view. It is a seasonal dock and it's taken out, over the winter time. So the only two aerials that we have of this dock in the water are from 1983 and 2024. It's just the timing of the aerials. So there's really no way to know when the shape of it changed. I'm not sure how the board, what information the board would like regarding that change, or if it's possible. The two trustee dock agreements that we have gotten from the trustees, which is also in the board's file, list a 75-foot long dock. And I think the letter today, and again, I'll review it more thoroughly, but just based on a glance at it, it seems like what the trustees letter is saying is that this dock right now that is depicted on the survey and that is on the property right now is not aligned with what their records show for the line. So, it's a scalable survey, a quick, measurement, just using a scale brings this to at most 70 feet off of the shoreline. The trustees' dock agreements have a 75-foot long dock. So I think that the trustees are just pointing out inconsistencies in the dimensions that they have in their records for the dock and then what their actual measurements shown. I think the letter indicated that they actually measured this dock. That's my understanding of it.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, okay. Some other general notes about, the properties in H pod. It currently does have conforming clearing. There are some mature trees on the upland that are not included in the uncleared area because the understory has been removed. There is a DEC permit just for the removal of the cesspool on the property. And that DEC permit has a condition that prohibits tree cutting from March 1st to November 30th. So that's just something to keep in mind also with regard to like the conditions on an eventual, whether if there is approval on an eventual approval, if that happens. And does, again, I feel like it's a little bit all over the place. So if there's any more pointed questions that the board has that I can answer, I'd be willing to give that. I do plan on giving a more in-depth, overview of the application at the continuation of the hearing.
Yeah.
Go for it.
In H pod, I forgot the formula for small lots. So is the 10,000 also compliant with H pod?
Yes, I think it's like a whichever is greater or lesser situation, and the 10,000 square feet is that number.
Okay. And then do you, since you call them out in the TAM, the mature hickory and eastern red cedar, do we know if those are being
There was a
maintained?
revegetation plan submitted to the file, and it does show a couple trees that
I
will
see
need
a
to be
couple large,
Yeah, but it
yes.
doesn't look like all of them. So I think some will be maintained according to the revegetation plan that was submitted.
So you're recommending the re-veg extend 50 feet
50 feet.
beyond the title. Do you want to speak to that?
Yeah, so
We should hear from them as
Right,
far as that.
the proposed revegetation is from the high water line. We're recommending it be from the tidal wetland line, because then the clearing limits would at least conform with the minimum clearing setback. And that would just make the property more conforming to the H pod regulations also.
So what would that take us to the proposed clearing after re-veg? Would it be
It would be, the actual,
different from what's on the
I
survey?
believe it would extend it about 10 feet more than what's proposed now. That's an estimate.
Can you show it on there?
Yeah. Oh, gonna need a second.
Can you just also blow that up a bit when you're
Yeah.
done with this?
Okay. I'm not super familiar with this PDF program, so I'm just gonna take a minute to figure this out. I believe it would be just about an additional 10 feet, because this is from the tidal wetland. That dimension is wrong, but it ends up being about 10 feet from my recollection.
So
I
that
can't
would
give it a-
represent what you're requesting?
Yes, from the tidal wetland.
So are they proposed, does the survey say they're proposing more than that?
The survey, the green is the proposed revegetation, so it would be extend about 10 feet further.
Where's the
from there.
plunge pool
Is it an
on this
easement
survey?
as
This
well?
isn't the survey.
Sorry.
Huh?
Sorry.
Yes, we're also recommending
okay.
the easement be put over the eventual buffer to protect it in perpetuity.
I'm sorry, there would be an easement over it.
Yes, that is a
Okay,
recommendation
thank
of
you.
the planning
Okay.
department.
So there's no longer a plunge pool?
No.
No longer a plunge pool.
Okay, because on the survey I'm looking at, it's on there.
The most recent survey
Am I
is
looking at the most recent?
from September 19th, 2024.
Yeah, that takes the pool out and the concrete. Platform.
Yeah.
Okay, any other
Okay.
questions for Morgan?
I know, was she
I'll
done?
give you a sec. Any other questions for Morgan? No, thank you. You want to come on up? And we'll go to the public.
Just one note on the revegetation. That is the one, we're game with everything Morgan wants to put on this, other than we would like to hold to the revegetation as proposed. We are putting a scenic easement in. We are revegetating. We're removing 2 existing non-conforming structures in that area, but this is an incredibly small lot, and we do want to conserve some amount of usable outdoor area for the homeowner. And so we would like to keep at the 50
But
feet.
this
as
is an
proposed.
aggressive, I'll just say that this is an aggressive redevelopment of this project from this particular lot. And as far as protection, 3 Mile Harbor is part of the, is part of the Harbor Protection Overlay District, which is in need of protection, right? So we're looking to increase buffers. This is a pretty aggressive redevelopment of this project from a very non-conforming tiny lot. So we're gonna, I think you might want to reconsider. We're going to leave the record open.
Yeah.
So I think you should reconsider that and take it with you and think about it.
We'll talk about it. Yeah.
That's something I feel strongly about too.
I would argue that with no variances requested, it's difficult to construe this as an aggressive development. I mean, if we're going to build something, of course, any development, I would just say that.
Okay, I get that too, and I'll reserve that. But either, we're looking to protect the harbor as well,
Yep.
so.
Can I just say one thing? I'm looking at the drawings. So on A22 shows the pyramid line, and you're allowed, of course, to go right up to the pyramid line, but it is extremely tight according to this. So, which I think
It is. Yeah.
you know, what's going to be the protection that there's no builder's error, there's that all of a sudden, you know, you're missing pyramid.
We've called it out on the drawings. We have filed it as such. We are going to be below it.
I'm sorry, sir, what?
Very good contractor.
You know, we can,
I just wanted to call it out because we often
No,
do.
it's
really not.
When people are very tight.
and if I thought there were any, I mean, we are sinking this building into the ground to be able to be tight to the pyramid as we are. We are doing, you know, everything we can to avoid the variance. So we know we are tight, but that second floor height, finished floor to the spring point of the roof is something like 5 feet. I mean, it's difficult to get a second floor on this structure without a variance, and we believe we've done it, and we will hold to the restrictions of the code.
I don't think we can guarantee that, but I might say maybe part of you, as architect, you require an as-built after the foundation's done or something, just to verify it before too much gets done.
Can you just repeat what you said, that you're sinking the house? I thought we're not allowed to adjust natural or manipulate natural grade to pyramid.
We're not manipulating natural grade, but
Are you
we have to excavate in any construction to create a foundation for the building.
Right.
So we're doing that. Natural grade sits where it is, but unlike most buildings where finished floor sits above natural grade, we actually have finished floor sitting below natural grade. So we need to waterproof this foundation wall. It is a more complex construction method, but it allows us to be compliant with pyramid.
It's done within the foundation.
I have to think about that, because I was under the impression that we weren't allowing that to be legal, but I could be wrong. So thank you. I'll think about it. Try and understand it better. Thank you.
Are we good?
Yes. Should we, anybody in the public would like to address this application? Come on up.
Hi, my name's Leslie Levy. I am the neighbor to the north of this property. So
Can I swear you in? Do you swear
okay.
affirm to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I swear, yes. If anybody's going to be affected by it, since my house also, which I've lived in since 1985, is also non-compliant, I mean, I'm much closer to the property line than would be allowed today. This whole area was really an area of small summer cottages. And little by little, people have bought properties. They've either renovated houses or expanded the houses or torn down existing properties and constructed others. In looking at this property, the person that Susan bought the property from owned it for about a year. And that person bought it from the previous owners who also owned the property across the street. So it was their main cottage, and it was a cottage across the street on Outlook Avenue. This lot was really their access to the water, hence the little accessory structure. When they sold the property, I don't know how the town allowed this, but the two properties were separate, even though one family used it for all those years. So in trying to restrict what Susan can put on it, it almost becomes non-buildable. But it seems to me that they've taken great efforts to put something on that's not excessive. I don't know too many people who would build a one-bedroom house. Obviously, this is a personal decision, and I think that it will be an asset to the neighborhood. I personally don't object to keeping the accessory structure. It's always been there. If she had asked to put in a pool, then you could say, because it has plumbing and a small refrigerator, oh, well, it's a pool house. To me, there must be a legal difference, but I'm not sure that it's very clear to me. But I have no objection to what she's doing, and I think it will improve the neighborhood. So thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Oh, the docks. The original docks, which was a T, were in wood, as were the ones in front of my house. Of course, over the years, those docks rot, aside from being hugely heavy, hence the railroad tracks, because to remove them every year, the family had a winch, and they would winch them up the railroad tracks. When they rotted away and came time to replace them, they chose something much lighter, easier to manage, and changed the configuration. Why exactly, I'm not sure. However, the trustees have been looking at our docks, because I've gotten notices that they have been taking photos for years. So it's really surprising to me, and you're not the trustees, that before this morning, I mean, this issue has not come up, that even the previous owners were not notified that this was not conforming to their requirements. I can't explain it, but it seems a little late in the game.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Anybody else in the public? Matt, anybody on the phone?
You have 0 callers. Thank you.
Okay. So I think we'll leave the record open for 30 days.
Or no, are we going to a continuation date?
Continuation.
wanna do
Oh,
that?
continuation
Continuation of
date.
the
I'm
public
sorry, the record in the hearing.
Samantha, did you say June 24th? So we can continue it on that night?
The motion to continue and keep the record open and adjourn to June 24th.
Okay. Okay, so in the matter of Susan Lehman, I have to put my glasses on. I'd like to make a motion to continue the public hearing and keep the record open and adjourn this until June 24th, 2025.
Second.
Sure.
Concur. Thank you.
Mr. Chair, before you read the next application into the record, I would like to voluntarily recuse myself from it, so I'm going to exit.
Thank you. We'll ask the alternate. John Thorson to come on up. Okay, our next hearing is Sands Capital Holdings LLC at 183 Marine Boulevard in Amagansett, Suffolk Tax Map Number 300-176-8-23.3. The size and location is 57,325 square feet at 183 Marine Boulevard, Beach Hampton, Section 2, lots 11 through 17, including part of Lot 10, Lot 2 of CMP SJ Amagansett. The description is to raise and renovate the existing residence and existing cottage in order to meet FEMA first floor elevation standards, construct 519 square feet of additions to the main residence, construct new stairs, reconfigure the existing swimming pool, new driveway, gate, attached basement garage, and to temporarily clear approximately 3,100 square feet of beach vegetation on a parcel of land containing dunes, dune land, and beach vegetation, and which is located within the front yard lot line setbacks higher than the maximum allowable height outside of the town's pyramid regulations and greater than the maximum allowable gross area. Relief sought is a natural resources special permit pursuant to 255-420 of the East Hampton Town, and 7 variances are required for this application. Variances of 6 foot 11 inches, 12 foot 9 inches, and 5 feet 7 inches are required from 255-1172D of the Town Code to allow the residents to be 6 foot 11 inches, 12 foot 9 inches outside of the town's pyramid regulations along the eastern and northern lot lines, and for the cottage to be 5 foot 7 inches outside of the town's pyramid regulations along the western lot line. 1 variance of 7 foot 9 inches is required from 255-1110 of the Town Code to allow the residents to have a maximum height of 37.9 feet above adjacent natural grade where 30 feet is the maximum allowable. 1 variance of 560 square feet from 255-1110 of the Town Code is required to allow the residents to have a maximum gross floor area of 5,082 square feet where 4,522 square feet is the maximum allowable. 2 variances of 4.6 feet and 0.4 feet are required from 255-1110 of the Town Code to construct a decking and swimming pool 15.4 feet and 19.6 feet from the front yard lot line where 20-foot setbacks are required, and any other relief necessary. The zoning district is B residence, VE 17 velocity flood zone, and the secret class is type 2. Council, do we have proper affidavit of service and posting?
Yes, we do.
Thank you. John, who's doing the report? So
Uh-oh.
we don't have a report this
You don't
evening.
have a report?
All right.
All right.
All right,
Do
well-
we have existing conditions?
Yeah, we'll use I think we'll use the existing conditions document for, and maybe we'll just have Andy come on up. You're representing us.
Do we have existing conditions so we can,
Not significant enough for the purposes of this. I have the aerial
we should have told.
now, and that's all I have access
He
to
was
right now.
aware, but that's all right.
Okay.
It's okay. Andy, just, you're aware, the lot was posted, I'm sure. so
Yes,
we
it
have
absolutely was posted. I think Britton
Okay.
submitted the affidavits and the neighbors were
Go ahead,
properly
proceed.
noticed. Yes. Good evening, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Thorson, I think they ought to put him in the Mets car and drive him out of the bullpen. Sort of unceremonial, but I'm happy to be in front of you tonight. I'm here tonight representing Sands Capital Holding. That's the Belsky family, Scott, Erica, and their 3 children, I believe she said. And Erica is here with me tonight. They own the 2 residences at 183 Marine Boulevard. The good news in terms of, the board's familiarity, some of the members of the board were on the board when this was in front of them at some point in the past, but I think the pictures would show exactly what you'd expect to see, a house that's fronts on Marine Boulevard that we're all pretty familiar with.
Sir, I just didn't get your name and address for the record.
Sure. My name is Richard Hammer, and I'm from Biondo and Hammer LLP in Montauk. I also have Lori Bapu. Did I pronounce that correctly? Lori Bapu from Blaze McCoy Architects and Britton Bistrian. We're all part of the project team. We're happy to be here to discuss and present what I think is an important project for the board's consideration. If you have any any questions I'm unable to answer, I'm sure they can help and chime in. I just want to mention we've applied for the DEC permit. We were expecting to have it issued for tonight. There was a problem with the publication, a little bit of delay, but in any event, when that comes in, I will forward that to the board for your file. I also want to draw the board's attention to a written submission I made on May 15th, details some of our presentation points in more detail. I wanted to use tonight's public hearing to really just hit on some key issues, policy issues, and respond to any questions you may have. I also am going to, when I finish my remarks, I'm going to submit for the board's file copies of things that I had referenced in my submission, like some of the adjacent approvals. One of the approvals that for this original residence that was approved by the zoning board, the DEC permits, it's all referenced in there. I just thought it would be helpful to hand it in when I'm done. There were some letters from in the file as well. We had 2 letters of support from the direct adjacent neighbors. There were also some letters that were submitted in opposition. So I'm also going to try and keep my remarks brief, just so that I'm sure Mr. Bragman is here for some reason, and it's not because of my fan club following me around. But in any event, I'll try to allow some time so that we can address any concerns you might have. I think a preliminary discussion of FEMA and flood insurance is in order. FEMA is an important statute, both for public health and safety, as well as for insurance rating under the federal flood insurance program. When FEMA was updated in 2009, keep in mind this area had been subject to FEMA. In 2009, there was a great big update of FEMA that affected all the communities in East Hampton. It was for 2 important reasons: upgrade public safety in flood-prone areas. There was also obviously a lot of information that had been gathered over the preceding 30 or 40 years that were incorporated into FEMA's upgraded regulations. And 2 was to stem losses from flood insurance programs nationwide. If you're a homeowner on the East End, you might remember the windstorm changes that occurred to your homeowners policies around 2002. Most homeowners policies exclude windstorm coverage based on losses sustained by Allstate and State Farm. They don't even write policies on Long Island because of these losses. In fact, I'm sure we've all experienced difficulty in getting homeowners insurance on the East End. Even outside of coastal locations, I personally was dropped by Allstate and then State Farm after decades of claim-free homeownership. They just pulled out of the area. I have very limited choice in my homeowners marketplace. I don't even know if I could name my current insurer. It's changed several times, but if you drill down into the details of your policy, you'll see that almost every standard homeowners policy has a flood exclusion from coverage. Basically, you're not covered if you experience any flood damage. Finding flood insurance that is sufficient may not be possible for most vulnerable homes. Even in everyone in FEMA flood zones qualifies for coverage under the National Flood Insurance Program that's administered by FEMA, sometimes called the NFIP. It's administered by FEMA, but your rates depend on compliance with FEMA elevation requirements. The maximum amount of structure insurance that is available is $250,000. If you compare the replacement costs on your homeowner's policy, I can't even imagine that $250,000 would suffice for any residence, no matter how modest it is. In any event, you can secure a flood policy for the $250,000 of covered insurance, even if you have negative elevation under FEMA. A house that doesn't comply with FEMA is deemed to be negative elevation. You just pay a slightly higher rate on your $250,000 of coverage. If you had positive elevation, meaning you comply with FEMA, it's at a lower rate, basically. As I mentioned, $250,000 is not enough for almost any home on the East End, and certainly not sufficient for waterfront homes. To secure additional flood insurance, called excess flood in jargon, if you had a lender on your house, they would say, oh, by the way, you have to secure excess flood insurance to cover our collateral. You'd have to go to a secondary market and pay rates based on your risk profile, aka elevation certificate that secures your home that you're proposing to purchase. Basically, in the Belsky case, it is apparently not available on this home at all. And in few limited instances that I have seen it on homes that don't meet positive elevation standards, the premiums for this insurance are excessive. In some cases, more than $100,000 a year, and also have very large deductibles, approaching $500,000 in some cases that I've seen. If you have a FEMA compliant home, this secondary insurance is available in much more affordable. Today, the Belskis are forced to self-insure this house, as many of the other people on Marine Boulevard. If it were damaged by a flood, any loss exceeding the $250,000 would be absorbed out of pocket by the family if they could. Their belongings, their art, their appliances, toys, windows, nothing is covered but beyond that initial exposure. Homeowners in this area are essentially trying to insure a teen driver with a robust accident record and maybe even a criminal record. Clearly, one objective of this application is to remove this property from the assigned risk category of homeowners policy and allow this homeowner to insure their investment in the area at reasonable rates. That's an economic factor that we all share in our community. As improvements are made to the area under FEMA, our community may qualify for flood insurance in the future with secondary markets with greater frequency and more affordable rates. The second major point I want to discuss is this house is not an aged house that was built back in colonial times. This house was built pursuant to zoning board permits that were issued in, I think it was April of 2006. I think they completed construction in 2008. It's a lovely home, not a disposable asset that should just be proposed to be demolished. It is part of the character of this community, and if FEMA were not changed in 2009 to render this house entirely non-conforming, we would not be here at all tonight. In fact, I would surmise had FEMA changes been fully understood in 2006 and throughout the course of this, any person constructing a residence would be wise to adhere to any changes. But I was actually in practice when the 2009 FEMA updates occurred. It was quite a surprise in certain areas, particularly in Beach Hampton, which some areas had never appeared in flood zones were included in flood zones. I think there were compelling safety reasons, particularly in Beach Hampton. It's a densely developed, low-lying area in the town of East Hampton. So that's kind of what FEMA was trying to target, is to raise the bar for safety in the area. The third point I want to make is FEMA is not an optional statute. I often consider it Boolean. If you're in a flood zone, you have to comply with the design requirements and elevation requirements. If you're not, sometimes called Zone X flood zone, you're out of these rigorous standards. But if part of the house is in a flood zone, the entire house must comply with the rigorous standards. There are many ways FEMA is enforced. It's enforced by our state building code, the international building code, our town code, as well as the federal flood insurance program. Sometimes they audit communities to make sure they're in compliance with their standards and will deny coverage. I think that happened in West Hampton Beach a couple of years ago or many years ago, but ultimately they did an audit and said, okay, we will continue to offer our flood insurance in this area. You can't comply to a lower standard than FEMA. You can't say, well, I'm in 17, how about 15? It just doesn't work that way. You either comply or you do not comply. There's no acceptable compromise. Our proposal is to lift this house to comply with FEMA. Our town code, and FEMA requires base flood elevation plus 2 feet of freeboard. We're in a velocity flood zone. That's one of the higher, it's where you have a structure that's expected to be impacted by water moving with velocity. Under our town code and FEMA, that requires horizontal framing to begin at the freeboard level. So when this house was constructed in 2006, FEMA had required a first floor elevation of 12. We're now required to comply with a first floor elevation of 21 feet. That's 9 feet of change in just a couple of years. The design requirements are slightly different today as well. House will be elevated using piers and piles, breakaway walls to meet the velocity standards. One of the most noticeable changes to this house is the existing first floor garage will no longer be usable as a first floor garage. It will be 9 feet in the air. Under the town code, this triggers a gross floor area variance that you'll see noticed on the application, as the formerly excluded garage on the first floor is not usable or excluded as a garage under our town code. This is not a self-created hardship. This is just a change to our code. Essentially, I think it was Ann Glennon was the first one to apply the garage exemption from the gross floor area. However, we're not doing anything other than raising the house, and that exemption doesn't apply. The last point I want to make, that the substantial improvement standard of FEMA requires all homes that are substantially improved to trigger compliance with elevation and design requirements of FEMA. Basically, this entire neighborhood will ultimately have to, without any question whatsoever, be compliant compliant with the elevation and design requirements of FEMA in the future. In fact, most of the properties on the north side of Marine Boulevard will ultimately be raised to comply with a flood zone, that's ambient elevation. It's a little different than velocity. However, it does have its own design requirements, and most of the area to the north, and if you look at the maps, you can see that it kind of follows the roads, but these are 14, 15, and 10 feet, which include freeboard, meaning that these will have first floor elevations of 17, 16, or 12 feet, depending on which flood zone they're in. This will happen whether or not the owners want this change or not. And the ticking time bomb is as bathrooms are remodeled, homes are renovated, expansions are made to the house. Essentially, you're going to trigger this substantial improvement standard under our town code, as well as FEMA. Substantial improvement standard states that any improvement that includes in aggregate 50% the replacement value of the structure will trigger this requirement. And this is measured in East Hampton from the date the structure first became non-conforming with respect to FEMA. In our case, this would be measured from 2009 because we were FEMA compliant in 2006 when the permits were issued. But I'm sure there are many homes that were already non-conforming that were rendered more non-conforming after the FEMA updates, meaning they might have been non-compliant to the prior. First FEMA, because it's an older area, they're older homes. It's ephemeral and unrealistic to look at this neighborhood and ascribe a character to the community that does not incorporate FEMA compliance over time. This is the entire point of the FEMA statute. All of these areas will eventually have to comply with FEMA. It's not, nor should it be, an optional characteristic. And it's not whimsical to say we'd like the appearance of this community to remain as it is. It's not a healthy, resilient community of homes that is safe and durable. It's just not realistic to expect the inhabitants to shoulder the concerns of non-compliant structures and the unavailability of excess flood insurance in the future. Many municipalities account for this in their zoning codes and incorporate some flexibility to require, based on FEMA compliance as a not an optional thing. For instance, common accommodation found in local zoning codes is to measure height and pyramid compliance line from the required base flood elevations under FEMA. Basically, if you cannot build a structure below that for your first floor elevation, it makes no sense to use other metrics or optics of zoning from existing natural elevations. They have no relationship to what is actually required for public safety. East Hampton Code does not accommodate FEMA in this fashion, at least not yet. I think there is an accommodation in our code that says a foundation that's raised more than 3 feet out, or 4 feet above grade shall not count as a story if you're doing that for FEMA, but that's the only resiliency built into it right now. I do think that, as we go further down the path, I think changes will be made to our code to encourage these types of applications and ultimate FEMA compliance. It does bear mentioning that this property and both residents pretty much comply with the dune crests and all the other dimensional criteria of the code. That's a very important protective feature of our code. Nearly all dimensional criteria are being complied with. We encounter variances solely because of compliance with FEMA. We violate pyramid, maximum height limitations because of adjacent low ground elevations, and to accommodate public safety of the FEMA statute. This is not a self-created hardship. Had the natural elevation of this area been much higher, perhaps we would be no relief at all. In general, the variance standards require the benefit of an applicant to outweigh the detriment to the general health, welfare, and safety of the community to qualify for a variance. And the variance requested be the minimum variance necessary and adequate to provide the applicant with relief. In this application, our requested variances originate with public health, welfare, and safety requirements attributable to FEMA and its design requirements. The benefit sought by this applicant is entirely consistent with the shared benefits our community receives from FEMA compliant communities. Perhaps the greatest criticism of FEMA law is that the character of the community is not considered by its public safety mandates. This FEMA law will in fact change our neighborhoods as it is implemented across the town. This change in this manner is both required and it is a positive change that will create a more sustainable and safe community to enjoy in the future. I'd say my written submission addresses some of the more specific variances we requested in more detail, but I'm happy to address any particular issues you might have with some of the concerns.
I think from what I'm looking at, I think that the drill down, particularly regarding the variance standards, is to really drill into the minimum variance necessary, right? Other alternatives, have we pursued them and stuff like that? And I know you're addressing them, but you're asking for some substantial relief as a result of raising the house for FEMA, and that's the crux of it. I get it. But as it stands today, there's the relief requested on height and pyramid in this situation is left up to the zoning board. There's not, we don't have a code that deals with FEMA. So basically, I think if you could, I don't know how to pursue the question. Have we pursued the minimum variance necessary options? Are there alternatives that could have been looked at?
Well, I think the most poignant alternative to this application is to redevelop this property new. Tear down the existing house, which I don't think the owner who purchased this existing house and frankly loves their structure would that's not a reasonable accommodation to pursue an alternative. The other alternative that I think you could consider, I actually can't think of another alternative. We have a structure. We're not developing this property new. This board has granted height variances and other types of relief to new construction. New construction, it would be easier to accommodate some of these FEMA concerns by designing a different house. We don't have that luxury. Just next door on this property is 189 Marine Boulevard. That was also approved by the Zoning Board of Appeals, and that is a FEMA compliant structure. That was part of the whole lot line modification application. I don't think there's a great difference between what was approved at 189, which was new construction. What we're proposing to do is to take the existing residence and raise it up to that same level. Yes, there might be differences in overall height of several feet because we're taking two different structures, but they were still able to get a two-story house. We have no desire to tear this house down. As a matter of fact, if you look at the renderings, while we're lifting it, there is an effort made to reduce some of the massing within those pyramid lines by altering the roof line on the top. That was something that Lori can explain more in detail. But that was done because, hey, if we're going to go through the effort to raise this house up, why don't we reconfigure some of the roof lines to reduce some of the massing? So that is one of the alternatives we considered. But in terms of actually eliminating these variances, you're talking about lifting an existing house 9 feet in the air, and you have surrounding elevations at 8 and 9 feet of natural elevation. So it's almost impossible to do this type of construction without requesting variances. The minimum variances, I would say, based on the project that's in front of you.
Okay, and then related to the GFA request.
I think the only alternative to eliminate the GFA request would be to eliminate the volume of the garage, which is an integral part of the house. Essentially, I don't even know what it would look like, but I don't think having a missing tooth on a house to eliminate a gross floor area is a reasonable request as well. I'm sure the applicant is going to would prefer to have a attached garage as part of this application. It just isn't available. There's no safe way to do it, but lifting the structure in that manner creates this gross floor area variance under the code as it exists today. It probably but when we first submitted this with the exclusion, I guess that's what happened. Is I personally have always thought that attached garages should be included in gross floor area, but the town interpreted under Ann Glennon, who was the chief building inspector, that they were excluded. So that's the change. But in terms of the actual structure, it's the identical structure. It's just lifted in the air.
Have you considered, do we have a construction protocol for this?
My question.
This is a very complex project.
Yes, and I do
And I
believe
think
there
we
are
need-
some
I think we need
detailed
to have a-
vegetation and plans in the thing. Maybe I can have Lori address the actual how-to on this application. But yes, there are detailed plans, and I'll defer to Lori or Britton if they have more
I
information.
know, maybe.
Well, I'd like to know why you just can't eliminate the garage.
Why we can't eliminate the garage? Well, I think
579
asking an
feet.
applicant to take a part of that house that legally exists today and eliminate that volume from the house architecturally just doesn't make a whole lot of sense to me. The gross floor area variance is created by an interpretation of the code that happened at some point in 2006. In my estimation, that was always included as gross floor area in 2006 when this was built. The detached garage was part of the gross floor area. We're lifting the existing house.
But it didn't seem to be explored at all. And then as far as the FEMA, if the house was FEMA compliant in 2006 under those rules, and then in 2009 it changed, isn't there a grandfathered status that is applicable to some of this FEMA?
Grandfathered status under FEMA only works if you remain below the substantial improvement standard. In some respects, complying with FEMA for a non-conforming structure, it's tautological. By lifting this house, you're substantially improving it and have to comply with FEMA. My argument has always been that at a certain point, every one of these houses will have to comply with FEMA. The 50% replacement cost, substantial improvement standard will be achieved on every structure. That's what FEMA is designed to encourage. It wants communities to become FEMA compliant. We are voluntarily coming in and asking to be FEMA compliant because there's a whole lot of reasons why this makes a lot of sense in terms of resiliency, investment, insurance. That's why we're doing this. I've seen some of the opposition letters that say, oh, this is all based on the desire to have a better ocean view. If you have any question, I'm sure Erica will allow you into her house. It has a lovely ocean view. This has nothing to do with trying to improve the view shed of this residence.
So the requirement to be FEMA requirement compliant is being required by doing the work to become FEMA compliant.
That is correct. When we proposed to make the house FEMA compliant, raise the elevation, we couldn't say, hey, you know what, let's just raise it 3 feet. No, you're going to raise the house, you have to raise it to the VE 17 standard, which requires a first floor elevation commencing with horizontal framing members.
And this is owner elected.
Yes, and in this instance, it's owner elected, but it's also statute supported. It's also supported by the Town of East Hampton Comprehensive Plan. If you read your zoning code, the preamble, it talks about, having more resilient and flood resistant communities.
Right, but they're not being mandated to do this by the federal government. They're electing to do this.
That is correct. However, there is a standard once you do a certain amount of renovation work.
I understand that.
It might be 5 years, it might be 6 years, maybe it's 2 years, that they will be forced to comply with FEMA.
By crossing a threshold that...
That is correct. And that threshold is not necessarily in front of the Zoning Board of Appeals. So a lot of this work can be done without building permits, et cetera. That is a trigger under FEMA as well.
Okay, but right now, they are FEMA compliant with the old rules.
They are not FEMA compliant under current, there's no good enough under FEMA. When FEMA changed and upgraded the flood zones in 2009, that became the FEMA map. The FEMA prior regulations have no effect and impact. This house does not, it doesn't receive a elevation certificate based on, well, it was compliant in 2008. Therefore, you get grandfathered in. No, there's no grandfathering of FEMA under flood insurance rates or elevation certificates. Immediately non-conforming, the old maps, the old elevations are of no...
If you were to do it for the beginning, as a start.
As a start?
Yeah, I mean, this house already had the compliance.
In 2008, yes, in 2006.
That had no FEMA anywhere, it was an empty lot, whatever. That would have to be compliant with the current standard.
That's correct.
But this one, there's nothing forcing it to be done now.
or of substantial improvement standard, which it will occur on this property. I just don't know a forecast of exactly when it's going to occur.
But the substantial improvement is to become FEMA compliant.
That is the trigger to become FEMA compliant.
And I mean, your reason for opening up your presentation and dealing with the insurance companies, do they recognize the old FEMA requirement as being compliant to their standards?
No.
That's right.
Absolutely not.
So it's about insurance companies.
So the detriment currently for the house that not meeting current FEMA requirements is not getting FEMA flood insurance or being
I think that's a small portion of what the detriment is. The other detriment is FEMA is designed so that houses that are built to FEMA don't cause additional public health and safety concerns in the neighborhood. If this house were impacted by water moving at velocity, it does not have breakaway walls. It doesn't have all the features that would allow it to be durable. What you would wind up with is flotsam, pieces of this house would flow across the street, impact cars, houses, maybe even pedestrians, who knows, basically. So there are a multitude of benefits that come from being FEMA compliant, that none of which this house currently benefits from. And the neighborhood benefits, the community as a whole would benefit from all of these houses being rendered FEMA compliant.
Any other questions? Well, I know you would have questions.
No, but I'm just wondering, we're going to talk to Blaze McCoy about this,
Yeah.
both of them. If we're going to talk to them, I'll save it, not have it for Andy.
I thought council wanted to say
Oh, yeah, I'm
something,
sorry.
but
Council?
I think that our alternate member got out the point that I was trying to convey or ask the question about. This is an election to raise at this particular time, and I think we got that point out, that it's not substantially damaged in excess of 50% at this time. And the substantial improvement that is occurring is not like you're adding a full second story to a one story and hitting the 50%.
No.
Right? This actual raise is what you're
Yeah, the actual raising of this structure would trigger substantial improvement. That's tautological.
You're claiming. It's not that there's some other substantial improvement that you're seeking to make, and then the raise is then required.
That's correct.
Yeah, it's the work itself that's requiring the work.
As I said, it's one of those that builds upon itself. However, had we proposed to expand the house.
But you're not doing
But we're not doing that. We are taking the exact residence, the exact square footage, and lifting. I mean, there's very minor changes to the property. I think if you read the TAM, it discusses them in more detail, but they're very minor. Squaring off little indents, et cetera. We're building a front entrance deck that qualifies as a deck. That is noticed for requiring a front yard setback. The reason that is occurring, just to put it out there, is this house is going to be 9 feet in the air. The front entrance deck, you're allowed to stoop in East Hampton Town Code. I think it's 4 foot in width or 4 foot in any dimension, because you're going to be carrying bags and groceries and everything up to this front door. It's going to be functioning in a different way. Our deck is actually a little bit larger, stoop, to accommodate the new elevation that you have to get in. In some respects, we're improving the size and the access to this property. We're making it a little bit shorter because of the stairways that we have to reconstruct in different locations. But it's the same exact structure. It's just being accessed in a different manner than it would be because of the elevation change.
Still adding 579 square feet of GFA just for that.
I'm sorry, I didn't.
And do you have to do this, raise this to the...
How much square footage of GFA just to do?
You said 579 for the garage, again, the garage.
Okay.
Do you have to raise it to the BFE plus 2-foot freeboard?
Yes, under FEMA, you're required to have add 2 feet of freeboard to the required elevation. And under the town code, as well as FEMA, horizontal framing members, we call it a flooring system, can't begin to run until you reach the freeboard. So at 17, we have to get to 19, and then we can have the floor system that accommodates the first floor. That's what puts the first floor at 21.
I just want to point out, you made a comparison between 183 and 189 Marine. there is a substantial difference. 189 Marine is a single-story home.
That's correct. It was designed to meet the FEMA. It was not the
Single-story.
existing
Right.
two-story
Now, what we're
house.
talking about is taking a two-story home and raising it.
Yes. It's a substantial one-story, to be perfectly frank. You know, I was involved with some of the applications on that, but yes, that is indicative of what FEMA would require in this neighborhood moving forward for on new construction. That 189 is not also a valid comparison in some respects because that had an existing residence that was, I think it actually was over the bluff line. That
It was into the dune.
Yeah, it was
Into the
built.
dune.
Benched into the dune that was removed. It had some historical values that I remember at the hearings, but that was a redevelopment application. This is taking the existing house that was approved in 2006 and rendering it FEMA compliant.
Any other questions? Do we
Brandon,
have questions, I think, for the architect? How are you?
Hi, my name is Lori Beppu. I'm here on behalf of BMA Architects and the homeowners.
Or do you swear affirm to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Thank you.
okay, well, I'd like to ask to start with, thank you. So when you take on a project like this, and we have many of them come to us, Marine Boulevard and other areas like that, they're oceanfront, we move them back from the ocean, we're happy to do that. And then we're faced with the dilemma we see tonight, these really enormous requests for pyramid relief. And it becomes necessary in many cases. One of the questions we always want to ask is, what were the architectural alternatives that were available at the time? Now, Mr. Harriman mentioned that there was some slight change in roof lines. How was that examined? Because when we look at this, we ask ourselves, we have this significant structure raised as high as it was. And again, we can see all the sight lines on them, what they are, the pyramid, and the height in general. Were there options there? Were there other things we could have explored? How far did this go in your conversations with the client? What would have been our options here to have been reviewed on this? Because I think we're asking ourselves, it seems like there should have been something else done to help us with these tremendous pyramids. What's your comment?
I think that's a great question. And I think Andy did a great job of pointing out that we're not changing the volume of the existing home. We're simply raising it up in the air. When we looked at that, we were interested in trying to minimize the amount of relief that we were requesting. Unfortunately, because of the dune crest setback, we were very constrained with the position of the house. So we even looked at rotating the guest cottage to see if we could reduce the amount of nonconformance. But because of that dune crest setback and not being able to move closer to the water, it left us with no other option.
So there might have been some options to change configurations of the layout or anything like that, and they really weren't part of that. Because we're being asked every time we come back to the standards, what possible alternatives might have existed that would have made this more compliant for us? What could we have looked at that said, hey, if this had been done, or did we fully examine those alternatives? So you're saying that the GFA stayed the same, the floor plan stayed the same, and you were restricted by the floor elevations. We won't argue about FEMA. FEMA put you at one spot, you wound up on a second floor. Then you were dealing with roof lines and ceiling heights and what you could deal with. So there were no other options in there that we could look for and say, well, had we brought down this a little bit, lost a little bit of floor space, we might have lost 3 or 4 foot of request on this, because you know, and we all know, we go down, we see 189. These are houses that we see on a regular basis that are up there requiring significant pyramid relief, and this board has been very sensitive about pyramids from the beginning. The conflict for us is that FEMA puts us in a position like you're in, trying to design with it, us trying to approve it. We understand the benefits of that. We also have to be, I think, really sensitive to the fact that where is the limit on this that we want to go. We're going to be balancing that when we make any decision here. So that was my first question. My second one was already brought up by the chair. This is a complex project environmentally, and we don't move forward on these without some significant project protocols. We want to know how it's going to be handled, how it's going to be assessed, how it's going to be attacked, how this is going to be staged, how is this going to be lifted, how are we accessing either side of the house. We look for those things to make sure that we can then hold the applicant, if they get approvals, to a standard that says, if we're only allowing you to access it from one side of the house, then that's what you have to remember. And we want to see it and something we can then refer to later on and say, this was the protocol we approved, not in one you're using. So I think that's significant, and we usually look for that coming from the engineering or the architectural firm in this case.
Understood, and that's certainly something we can work with the board on. We've done other projects similar to this that have that level of complexity, and we're capable of executing.
The sensitivity of the sites on these sites for us is always primary in our thinking. What are we doing beyond the mere discussion of the architecture? Is what is the potential collateral damage? What are we doing during construction? How are we constructing? Where are we storing materials? How are we excavating? These things should be spelled out for us, because it's too much of a blank check if we just say, go build the house because we like what you've offered. We have to know more about the procedures, particularly on these houses. And we've had a number of them in front of us. We've been down this road quite a bit.
So I'm looking at A203. Tyler's on A201. Tyler, can you just go to A203 quickly? So on A203, it looks like can you tell me what's going on with A203 with the blue dotted line representation, and it looks like the proposed house, is that right?
So this is the
versus the proposed house.
Correct. So we're changing the approach to the house, so that the house is, even though we're lifting the entire house, rather than entering on the second floor, which is currently the case, we're entering on the elevated first floor. So that's where you can see the reduction of that blue line dropping down, because we're actually reducing the bulk of the stair entrance at the street side.
Right. And respects to the roof line.
The roof line, we wanted to really reduce the pitch of the roof so that the overall mass was reduced as well. And we also took the opportunity to clean up. There's a lot of jogs in the existing roof line, so this allowed us to make a cleaner presentation.
I think it's, I did go to architecture school, but I never
Britton, how
passed
are
my
you?
exams.
Britton, you announce your name?
Britton Bistrian.
Do you swear affirm to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do. I think there's one thing I just want to state about the envelope, which is really important. If you look at that blue line,
A201.
This one, that's the line of the existing house. So as you can see, this proposed house is below the line of the existing house. So the top of the roof in some areas today is higher than the top of our proposed roofs. I'm just going to restate that. We're raising the house up 9.5 feet, but we've compressed it. And that was part of the mitigation we proposed. We compressed the house so that when you're standing on Marine Boulevard and you're looking at the top of the roof today, and hopefully looking at the top of the roof in 24 months, it's actually lower in most locations. It's not, nowhere is it higher. So I think that's really critical, because you said, what was the design that we took into consideration? What were the alternatives? Well, the alternative is we could just raise the house how it is and not change the roof pitch, and our period variances would be
So
greater.
why are we seeking height relief?
Because we're still over, well, the existing height is over. Correct. We don't meet code today. So we're less than we are, but we're still over what's permitted. And since we're changing the elevation, it's still a variance. Kind of like the pool variance, which we haven't touched on. The pool is 19.6 feet from Marine Boulevard. It needs to be 30.
But when was the house built?
20. So we don't, the pool doesn't meet, so when we ask for a variance for the pool, but it's literally just elevating the existing pool.
So the height, so if it was built in 2006, it was built to nonconformity with the height? Because I don't think the heights have changed, have they?
For what, maybe it was the way they did it from natural, we honed in on natural grade at its lowest point a lot more in the last 20 years than they did in 2006. Okay. And that's the best explanation I can give you. Is that we took a spot elevation in grade and said, okay, it can't be higher than this. We didn't look at every single perimeter of the foundation. We didn't study grade and height like we do today 20 years ago. Mm-hmm. And the other thing I want to point out, could you just put either the side elevations? Because I heard what Ed said about, how did we reduce this? Again, I'm going to trace the existing house, blue line. We take the existing house and we compress it this way too. So not only are we compressing it from above, we're compressing it from the side. So we meet FEMA by reducing the massing. And I think that's a really key component to why this application is very successful. I'm gonna step aside for Laura now.
Any other questions?
What is the current height of the roof?
Existing, you're asking existing? Yeah.
Same here.
9.5 feet short.
Looks like elevation 4610, right?
Yeah, it looks that way.
Well, that's the elevated, if we were, so it's that minus the amount that we're elevating, which is the 9'6".
But that blue dotted line meets that new ridge.
Looks as if the existing and the new maximum height are the same, according to this.
The blue line indicates if we were to take the volume of the house now and elevate it into conformance.
I see, okay. All right, yeah. So we don't know how much it's out of variance at this point.
Right, so we don't know the current height.
I don't have the current height documented in front of me right now, but we can get that for you.
I'm fine. If anyone else wants to ask any questions.
Any other questions? So in terms of I think, Andy, in terms of a construction protocol, I think for this site being where it is, what it is, I think, and the amount of work has to be done to raise this house and the amount of work that's being done to it does require some type of protocol that deals with that sensitivity.
Certainly.
So we need that. I think we would like to request that.
Sure. And, I do think that we have one benefit is we have two structures with two parking areas, and we have more areas to access off of Marine Boulevard than you would on a typical property. So I think we can incorporate that into into a protocol that will address the board's concerns in terms of staging, how this is going to be done. But I could see, I think some of it's intuitive, but I would like to spell it out exactly for the board's consideration.
It might be intuitive to you and I, but
maybe more to you.
These things can go another way in a hurry if we don't write them down.
Things can go wrong in construction.
Well, and one of the key things is this is the existing structure. There's no intent to reconstruct, demolish this thing, basically we want this house to be what is raised with the small additions and changes that we made that are trying to minimize the massing above that in those pyramid lines, as Britton explained.
So we'll probably need to leave the record open for a little, somewhat, right, to get that done?
I would say 2 weeks should be sufficient.
Should we hear from the planning department?
Yes.
Good evening, Tyler Borsak for the Planning Department.
Do you swear affirm to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do. So the subject property is situated on the south side of Marine Boulevard in Amagansett. The project before the ZBA is the request to lift the existing main residence and the cottage to meet FEMA first floor requirements, along with additions to the main residence, reconfiguring the swimming pool, constructing a new decking, attached garage, new driveway, gate, and steps, which result in several nonconformities. The existing residence is located in what is the most conforming location available on the parcel for a residence, and any redevelopment of the parcel would likely be in a similar, if not identical, location. The stretch of shoreline has not experienced severe or chronic erosion since the 1970s and early 80s, when several of the homes along the oceanfront were relocated landward. Nonetheless, the potential vulnerability of this area to flooding and erosion should not be underestimated. Coastal areas are inherently dynamic and prone to cyclical changes in erosion rates and patterns, especially adjacent to the ocean shoreline. These changes and shifts in coastal areas are becoming more likely because increased storm intensity and activities, as well as increases in sea level and climate change impact our coastal habitats, continues to progress. The proposed project is seeking undertaking lifting the existing 3,283 square foot residence 9 feet 6 inches to meet FEMA's 21-foot base flood elevation. The applicant also proposes converting the existing garage to living space and other small additions to the residence, constructing a new ground level garage, reconfiguring the existing swimming pool, decking and stairs, and lifting the existing cottage on the parcel for the same purposes. The lifting of the two residences in place causes 4 of the requested variances, 3 pyramid nonconformities, and 1 maximum height. Raising the main residence pushes the eastern first floor and second floor decking 6 feet 11 inches, and the northern street side of the residence 12 feet 3 inches beyond the pyramid line, as well as increasing the overall height above the surrounding grade to 37 feet 9 inches at the peak of the roof. Just to note, again, that blue line is if they lifted the existing residence and what that would be like. That's not as the house is today. And the existing roof is probably around 28 feet 3 inches, and then raising it at 9.6 would bring it to the 37.9 number that we're seeing now. The existing second residential cottage is proposed to be lifted 8 feet 11 inches, which creates a pyramid nonconformity of 5 feet 7 inches along the western property line. The existing swimming pool is proposed to be reconfigured slightly, and a front yard lot line variance is requested to allow it to be constructed within the same setback as the existing pool, which is 19.6 feet. So that setback isn't changing, the pool's just changing slightly, so it's not really an in-place, in-kind replacement. Similarly, the applicants are requesting a front yard setback variance for new decking on the street side of the residence. This was already sort of addressed. This decking functions as a large landing area to the entrance to the residence. If the decking was reduced to 4 foot by 4 foot landing, the structure would be exempt from setbacks, but obviously being elevated like 11 feet in the air above grade, there is some discussion to be had there about making it slightly larger and granting a variance instead. Part of the application are some minor additions to the residence, squaring off small areas, as well as incorporating the existing garage into the floor area of the residence after it was raised well above the surrounding grade. The small additions and inclusion of the inclusion and furnishing of the existing garage as part of the residence increases the GFA of the main residence from the existing 3,283 square feet to a proposed 3,802 square feet, which would be a conforming residence. However, since there's a second residential use on the parcel, both those structures combined already exceeds the maximum allowable GFA. The 1,280 square foot cottage combined with the proposed residence results in a total GFA of 5,082 square feet, where 4,522 square feet is the maximum allowable. The existing combined GFA on the property is 4,563 square feet, which is still slightly non-conforming. The majority of the increase in the GFA does not appear to require any significant change to the exterior of the building, given that the area already is contained as is the attached garage and won't require significant alterations to the building. The remainder of the project are fairly minimal changes to the existing driveway, from 2 driveways to a single access serving both residences. A unique feature of the proposal is the proposed use of clover paved driveway, which generally consists of small pavers with clover ground cover mixed between the pavers, and it provides a moderately well-draining driveway. A concern with any area of primary and secondary dune habitat is the ability of vegetation to survive without significant watering and or fertilization, which is why generally the ZBA requires quartz gravel to minimize runoff and not require the additional concerns that vegetation might bring with it. The ZBA has approved such structures in the past, one of which was recently on 143 Isle of Wight. This was not in a dune land area, but a sensitive parcel regardless. The applicant should speak to the long-term feasibility of this design without the need for significant maintenance or fertilization. The proposed project will require an additional 3,100 square feet of temporary clearing, which will be revegetated after completion of the construction, and proposes to reduce overall clearing by 979 square feet. Similarly, both lot coverage and total lot coverage are proposed to be reduced slightly through the elimination of some roof overhangs and small accessory structures on the ground. Lot coverage is proposed to be reduced by 176 square feet, total lot coverage by 402 square feet, which are minimal changes, but worth noting. Overall, the project represents fairly extensive construction on the parcel, which is proposing some significant nonconformities in order to make the existing residents conform to FEMA standards and make some small additions to the existing structure during that process. The dimensional variances are likely the most complex aspect of this project when compared to the environmental impacts. No additional footprint is proposed for the two main structures, and the structures are not encroaching on the dune more than what already exists on the parcel. The proposed clearing is fairly limited around the existing structures and is proposed to be revegetated after construction is complete with appropriate native vegetation. Other than that, you mentioned the construction protocol, which I think is important. Obviously, it's a very visible area in town, and we discussed the height of the building, so I can answer any questions you might have.
Questions for Tyler?
Well, there's a on the first page of the submission with the architectural, we have some planting plan. Have you reviewed that?
I think it's good overall. I did see that there was Hollywood juniper, which generally we don't want on a planting plan. It's not invasive. It's not necessarily not native. We do see they do have some along the road frontage. I think along the road frontage is probably fine, but the stuff on the south side of the house, I think if that were replaced with something more appropriate, or more native, then it'd be great. It's not a bad plan by any measure. It's mostly bayberry and beachgrass, and there's some shad in there as well. There's a lot of invasives on the south side. There's like black pine in there as well on the south side a lot already. But I think overall it's okay. I think some slight modifications would make it perfect.
Is there something you could recommend instead of the Hollywood juniper?
I mean, if they wanted a tree, they could certainly use red cedar. It's not, no tree is ideal on the ocean front. It's obviously a harsh environment to be growing in, but that'd be one cedar for another essentially.
Or is the clover, the grass growing in the blocks that they're proposing for the planting, is that critical for them to function in terms of drainage? If they were to drive on it and it's not there, they can't water it, they can't fertilize it, it dies off. How much of a negative is that weed?
I'm not 100% certain on the function of it. If they can just fill it with sand and I don't know. I don't know.
It's generally done for aesthetics because it's much nicer than
right,
not.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Okay.
Any other questions for Tyler? Thank you, Tyler.
Thank you.
Anybody in this audience would like to address this application? Jeff? How you doing, Jeff?
Good evening, Mr. Chairman and board members. It's been a bit of a wait. I'm Jeff Bradman, East Hampton, New York. I represent Rona Klopman, who's the neighbor directly across the street. And we're concerned about the size of the variances, the substance of the variances, and the seeming lack in the plan of any effort to minimize the variances that are necessary. And they are significant variances. The pyramid variance is required from 3 different lot lines, and they're large variances. They still need, they're asking for additional ground floor area in the house, and they're over ground floor area now. That's a substantial variance. The height variance on the house is very significant. It's nearly 8 feet. Maybe I misunderstood Ms. Bistrian when she described what it was going to look like. I thought she said, oh, it's going to be about the same roof line. You won't be able to tell the difference. Well, it's 8 feet different. That's a big difference. And if I read the documents correctly, it looked to me that the second floor top of the floor was at 32 and a half, elevation 32 and a half. You can correct me if I'm wrong and we'll go over it, but that would mean that your feet are on the floor 2.5 feet above the maximum height requirement in East Hampton, because the maximum roof height's 30 feet. That's a significant intrusion visually, and something to be concerned about. The landing is being increased 5 times over what it should be because of the location, and that's what triggers another one of the variances. But we think these variances are significant, and they're going to create significant visual impacts, and they're also going to create the possibility of copycat applications, and you're going to create a precedent here. And I want to talk a little bit about what council was describing as the as what FEMA's all about. And, I'm glad we finally untangled what this application was about, because I spent a lot of time trying to decipher his letter from May 13th to figure out if this was, a voluntary, I'm just doing this to do it, which now we know that's what he's doing. He's coming in front of you and saying, I don't have to do this, but I'm going to do it. And because I'm going to do it, it's going to cost us, a substantial amount of money. And therefore, I've got to meet FEMA elevations. It's sort of like I'm creating a problem for myself, and then I'm going to solve it by building up the house. And what he's suggesting to you is that in doing that, the only alternative that makes sense is that the zoning board grant him the variances. Basically, he's saying like, well, I have to do this because FEMA requires me to do it. And it makes it, he used a fancy philosophy word, but he was basically saying to the board, the request for variances is redundant because FEMA makes me do it. Well, that's not the way the law operates. That may be the policy of the law that council would like to see, because he's telling you, oh, in the future, what's going to happen is everybody's going to comply with FEMA, suggesting, I would say, that means, big, tall houses that would require variances, and you're going to have to grant them, and that's going to be the fate of Marine Boulevard. I call that the Dune Road philosophy of land planning, because if you know Dune Road in West Hampton, they're all up on stilts, and they're these big, tall houses. And council, again, is saying to you, not clearly, but I'm going to say it as clearly as I can, that the better policy, the progressive policy, I would disagree with that characterization, is that the law should allow everybody to start running your height restrictions from the elevation that's required from FEMA. In other words, you get a free ride on FEMA, and on top of that, then you can meet your height requirements. Well, that's gonna produce Dune Road on Marine Boulevard. And that again, he may think that's what the better policy is for the future of the town. That argument is better addressed to the town board. And if my memory serves me correctly from when I was on the town board, and I think I was, when we amended this thing and gave it slight credit on the foundation that can stick out of the ground and said it's not a story, there was absolutely no interest, no energy in going that way that some other municipalities have chosen to go, because it's a recipe for the acceleration of large, tall houses higher and higher. And that's what he's arguing for tonight. That's what you're looking at. And, I have to say, I was, scratching my head when I heard Ms. Mistrian say, well, it's going to look the same, because I'm going like, gee, my reading of the plans is the roof is going to be 8 feet high, 7.9, whatever it is, 7 feet, 9 inches, nearly 8 feet taller. So the question is, I think it is fallacious to say to a zoning board, oh, you have to give me these variances because I've decided I'm going to do a major repair, major improvement on the case, and it's going to bump up against all your other things. So, it's a benefit to the community. No, the zoning board has separate responsibilities, separate requirements. The 5 standards, and also one I was happy to hear the chairman say right away is the minimum necessary that's required. But I want to jump back quickly to FEMA, because I think, again, I'm not sure that we got an accurate statement of what FEMA is all about. If I build a house in 2009 and it meets FEMA, that's a lawful house. That house is a compliant house. It's not an illegal house. And the way you know it is that what council was describing to you, the substantial improvement concept, is built into the law, and it is a grandfathering type statute, as member Savarese pointed out. Because what the drafters of FEMA understood was, hey, conditions change. We're going to change the elevations and the boundaries of the FEMA districts as we go along. What do we do about existing houses? So they came up with a very logical, I think, a rule that makes a lot of sense. They basically said, we're going to let homeowners do additions and changes up to a certain point. And, when they get past that 50% of the value of the existing house, then we're going to call it a substantial improvement. And at that point, we will make them elevate to whatever the current standards are. So it's not correct to say that everybody is going to have to conform in the way they're suggesting it be done here today, which is, oh, you have to give me variances and let me, in addition, build up to FEMA, especially in front of the zoning board, which has natural resources jurisdiction. And one of those requirements in the natural resources jurisdiction is exactly what Chairman Deline was talking about. Alternatives that are available for, that are possible for the applicant to present that would minimize the relief that he's asking for. And I would suggest to you that this isn't something to adjourn this case for 2 weeks and get a construction protocol and go, I guess we heard from the architect and nothing can be done. I mean, come on. There are many things that can be done here. And we could, certainly it could be a flat roof building. They could change the stories. This is a voluntary project. As I said to begin with, he's creating a problem and solving it in the way he tells you the law makes you solve it. Not true. It's just not true. I would recommend against the Dune Road, policy of flood prevention. And I might add, a couple of things that were said by council that, wind damage is a big issue. Well, maybe putting a roof 8 feet above our maximum roof height, it would be a problem in a storm, okay? It's not just flooding. It's not just freeboard. That can create dangers too. It's just not a good idea. So, there are things that could be done that are not involving just raising the whole house. But, the argument I keep hearing is, we didn't change the massing of the building. There's, nothing new is going, nothing to see here, nothing to see here. Well, they're asking for nearly 600 square feet of extra square footage on a property where they already have a cottage with 3 bedrooms in it. How many properties in East Hampton have a legal live-in cottage with 3 existing bedrooms? They're over the GFA right now, and they come in and they want more GFA, but the description is on that is I'm reading from the May 15th letter from council. The description is, it's largely attributable to the 579-foot garage that's located. We're just moving it upstairs. And so what's the difference? Well, what's the difference? One is not gross floor area. One is gross floor area. So to me, that's not an explanation. That's a diversion. It's a direction to you to ignore what's going on. So they want increased gross floor area. They want massive pyramid variances. They want a height variance of 8 feet, and they're going, nothing to see here, nothing to see. And that's how he explains a lot of the problems here. When in talking about the pyramid relief, allow me to read this, okay? You tell me if you understand what it means. These are largely output variances and relate to single dimension based on the current height and its degree of conformity to the existing regulations and relate to the finished height of the structure and require no further explanation. Boom. Well, if you understand it, I don't understand it with my years of law school and training in zoning. The bottom line is they're big, massive pyramid variances. I remember when I was counsel to this board in the early 80s, the pyramid law, piercing that pyramid law was like a major no-no. You just didn't do it. And they're like, they want 8 feet, 9 feet, 3 sides. Who cares? What's the difference? No. You can't justify this by saying, if you let us
build to FEMA and keep our existing house, so we've got all these variances, we're conferring a benefit on you because it's much safer. Because in the future, council doesn't know what this town will look like. When people come in front of this board, if you're doing your job, which I have to say, tonight, I'm really impressed by the comments I'm hearing from the board. If you're doing your job, you are going to decide what kind of community you want to live in. You're not going to just rubber stamp, a plan because they go, we now have the elevation, and so what if we have pyramid variances? So what if we have too much gross square footage? So what if we added, more space to it, and it's going to be more massive? You get to decide. So you can't say that it's going to look like what he's talking about tonight. This board could say to this applicant, we want to see a one-story house, or don't do this, or tear it down and start over and figure it out. Figure it out. You don't have to decide this tonight. They've got they got a whole team here.
Council, how much more time are you going to require?
I'm not going to take much more time. I promise. I was just a little confused today trying to, find my way through the narrative that was given. Basically, we think this is an undesirable change in the neighborhood. We think it has adverse impacts that are quite obvious. These three houses next to each other, the one if you're facing them, the one to the right is the person with whom this owner made the agreement and got the cottage, so they're obviously friendly, and that was one of the supporting letters. And the house to the left, I understand, was designed by the same architect. That's also a supporting letter. But we think there are serious negative impacts on the neighborhood. It's going to create a precedent. If you want to know where it could go, way further down on Marine Boulevard, there are some massive houses. We don't want that. And you can't walk in front of a zoning board and go, this is what you got to do, because if we elevate our house, we need these variances. And if you say no, it's redundant, and, whatever he was trying to suggest, that ousted you from your responsibilities. It doesn't matter. I'll finish on this. The zoning board has different responsibilities. This is not unusual that there are conflicts and different policies. For example, the Architectural Review Board can lower zoning requirement. It doesn't have to honor zoning requirements. If they find a reason, they can say you can't build a bigger house. There are many conflicts like that. So it's not, they can be harmonized. But you can't get up in front of a zoning board and say, you can't do anything, we're conveying a benefit, give us a variances. It's not enough. My suggestion is adjourn it. I would like to see, I think that it would be helpful to the board to see an existing plan with elevations of the existing house. It's not the little dashed blue line, where I didn't understand that either. They apparently raised up the existing house. I'm not sure why they did that. But let's see, apples to apples. Let's see, the elevations on the new and the elevations on the existing, so we can see clearly. And let's please, I would urge you not to discuss, construction protocol until and unless we get more information and we can have an intelligent, calm conversation about what could really be done here. Because he's talking about spending more than 50% on this house, and this is not a good result for you or the community. Thank you.
Thank you. Anybody else in the audience want to address this application? Matt, is there anybody online?
Yes, you do. You have one caller. Are you ready?
Sure.
Okay. I'm going to unmute last four digits, 5833. You are live.
Caller?
Thank you. Good evening to the board, and I will not repeat what Mr. Bragman so eloquently.
Can you tell us your name, please?
I'm sorry. My name is Jack Hassad, and I live at 186 Marine Boulevard, directly across the street from 189 and the cottage. And I am going to. Mr. Bragman very eloquently summarized some of the problems with this application. And FEMA is really irrelevant here. It's solely, the 189 is grandfathered, just like my house, which was built in 1972, is grandfathered. And by the way, I get flood insurance, and I get reasonable homeowners insurance, and nobody says anything that my rates go up because I'm not FEMA compliant. Sure, if somebody buys my house and tears it down and wants to build something new, they're going to have to comply with FEMA. But this is a totally voluntary desire to expand this house substantially. I personally believe that the need to raise it, especially raising the pool, if I read the plans correctly, is because the dunes, and I can see how the dunes have grown just from standing on the street. And so I firmly believe that part of this is to get views back for them. But I want to speak more specifically, because Mr. Bragman handled so perfectly the issues of what a bad neighbor this house is looking to be, with its height and its violation of the pyramid law. But I'd like to address the so-called cottage. Just by way of history, the original house here was a stucco house built by Del Webb, the owner of the Yankees, for Sonia Henney, his wife, who was the Olympic skating star. And that garage was on that house. It was a pre-existing, non-conforming use. And I know it was a garage because the garage door was right in front of my house, and I see it in fact, I once tried to rent it, and there was some residence ability in that garage. Now, in 2022, when 189 and 189 was being built, the two owners, they basically performed the shell game in that they kept the garage on 189's property, which increased the square footage of that lot to enable the 189 house to be built bigger. And then they just came to this board and asked for the change of the lot line to transfer the garage to 183, which was done. Now, in the past, with respect to Bridgehampton, this board has oftentimes noted how people have bought highly restricted homes, knowing that there were limits on what they could do, and then come to this board asking to build something bigger. Well, this is even a perfect example of that. The Belskis lived next to the garage the 16 years. They knew exactly what its size was. It's very low. It's very set back from the beach. And yet they, even before they owned it, they spent thousands of dollars, and they admitted this, Mr. Belsky admitted this to the neighbors, to renovate it, even before it was transferred to his property. So for him now to say that he needs a garage and he has to renovate the primary residence because he wants to turn one of his garages into living spaces, I mean, that's preposterous. He had a garage. He could have kept it. And he also knew the size of the garage and where it sat in terms of the beach. And so for him to now look to build a second story on that original garage just is not right. And this whole project is going to adversely affect myself and all of the neighbors in terms of the light, air, and open space. And therefore, I really implore the board to deny all these variances. If the board has no questions, thank you for your time.
Thank you. Thank you.
Chair, if I may just address something, I'd just like to clarify some of my testimony. I think I'm having like a day after my birthday brain fog. The blue line, Mr. Bragman was entirely correct. The blue line was the elevated existing residence. And the response that I just want to make sure I'm clear because I wasn't clear. Member Johan had asked had we looked at reducing the envelope, and what I was trying to say was that we did reduce the envelope to, when we elevated it, we looked at how we could reduce the envelope from the raising the existing structure to making it a little bit lower, but the side envelope is, the narrowness of the property is, when you take those stairs, it's 20 feet more narrow, something plus or minus. So we were able to reduce the side envelope. And I think that Mrs. Belsky would like to just come up and address the board.
Good evening.
Announce your name.
Erica Belsky.
Do you swear affirm to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do. Good evening. I want to introduce myself. My name is Erica. My husband Scott and I own 183 Marine and have 3 young children, Chloe 12, Miles 10, and Poppy 6. We've had our home since 2014, over 10 years, and cherish our neighborhood and community. Our neighbors have become lifelong friends, and we've celebrated birthdays, anniversaries, and many milestones within our home. We're here today because we want to protect our home, not just for us, but for the future. I may not understand all the technical data on variances, FEMA, and the like, but this project represents a desire to ensure the long-term viability of this house and an investment into the durability of the property, and I hope will benefit our children and future generations. We know that if this house is made FEMA compliant, we ensure the safety of this house and the neighborhood. We've put so much thought and care into this plan. We've worked with so many professionals to design a renovation that honors the character of the house and the street. We've made sure that charm, the scale, and the feel of the neighborhood remain intact. We're doing everything we can to do this the right way. And as parents, as neighbors, and as longtime members of this community, we're simply asking for the chance to continue making memories in this home for many years. We are grateful for your consideration and for the time you've given. Thank you.
Thank you. Andy, come on up.
Boards, I just want to address a couple of things very quickly, and then I'm happy to discuss. A couple of things we can agree on. This house, this cottage, these are in the best location on this property to develop. It sounds to me like Council Bragman is talking about, well, make it a one-story. We're talking about a redevelopment application, to tear down this house, start anew. That's never been our intention from day one. What I haven't heard is anybody say, you know what, FEMA is a bad idea. Compliance with FEMA is a terrible idea. When you talk about FEMA nonconformity, it's not like having a nonconforming accessory structure with a bathroom in it that you should stand by and say, oh, well, you can't have that today. Nobody stands behind FEMA and says, hey, I'm 4 feet lower than I'm allowed to be under FEMA, and thinks that's a positive attribute of a property. FEMA nonconformity is a stain in some respects that, hey, this is not as durable, it's not elevated, it's more flood prone than it would be had it been FEMA compliant. So I just want to put out there that stating that the neighborhood doesn't have to improve in this fashion, that is absolutely not what FEMA requires. FEMA will require eventually all of these structures become FEMA compliant. So this whimsical picture of, well, everybody can decide to not comply with FEMA, I think will lose steam as we start to achieve substantial improvement standards on all of the adjacent residences. I do agree the town board did address new construction by saying, well, you know what, we should really give this 4-foot relief under our code. They weren't thinking about existing structures at that time. And that's what's changing is most of these waterfront areas are developed. The new construction, yes, you do get that relief. That's also shared by the existing, but we're going to have to start talking about repurposing the existing housing stock that is not FEMA compliant. I think the FEMA is an incentive, it incentivizes people to become FEMA compliant, whether this homeowner decided to do this voluntarily or not. We're at the end of the road where you would be if this were ratcheted up over a couple of years. Oh, we replaced some windows. Oh, we did some shingles. Oh, we re-roofed it. We did some new appliances. Bang. we're going to be in front of you. We're doing this voluntarily because I think it's a good idea. Compliance with FEMA is a good idea. As to the comment about output variances, you don't need to look further. No, I think that actually makes sense. What I was trying to say is if you raise a structure 9.5 feet, it is very apparent where you would get an 8.5 to 9 foot, in some cases larger variance. It's because of the lift. We are not inventing these things. It's you are lifting this structure 9 feet. That's where your variances are coming from. I didn't say you shouldn't consider them. I said there's no further explanation. It makes sense. If I have something here and I lift it here, the pyramid lines will be varied according to natural grade at that point. And that is the explanation that explains why those things are being created by our project. And I'm happy to consider anything else the board wants the applicant to provide. Obviously it's been a long road to get here, and we think this is a very, we would, if you would like additional documentation, we'll certainly consider it.
So, I mean, we've heard some, let's see, I'll put it this way, testimony that this is an elected thing to, and you're saying the same thing, you're electing to do this to raise the FEMA. Sustainability, all that stuff.
That is correct. It's a preemptive FEMA compliance rather than a inducement into FEMA compliance at some point in the future.
Then deal with your legal right to keep the existing footprint of the house, use of the house, and then also pierce the GFA requirement. If it's elective, you're electing to lift the house, but you're also electing to pierce the GFA. Can you talk to me about the legality of that and how we as a board are going to balance that?
Up until Ann Glennon
Because GFA is a pretty tall bar for us, right?
Up until Ann Glennon made a determination that an attached garage was excluded from GFA, I think the GFA of this attached garage was part of this residence. That's a relatively new, I want to say it was like, what, 2004, 5, somewhere in there. I remember arguing with people saying, no. The GFA of an attached garage is included. It was a determination from Ann Glennon. If you read the code as it existed at the time, it was always included. So the GFA change was a determination of the town building inspector that has now been incorporated into our code, that it says, okay, you can have an exclusion of 600 square feet. That didn't exist in 2006. So I think lifting the house as it existed in 2006 to today, that's that attached garage not being counted was not part of the nonconformity. It was included in 2006. It was excluded when Ann made that determination, and it's being used against us today because now the code provides an exclusion of gross floor area attributable to attached garages. That wasn't available in 2006. So it's a little bit of a circular argument to say, well, we can eliminate that. It's part of the existing house. It was built as part of the existing house in 2006. I believe it was considered part of the gross floor area in 2006, and it's just because of code changes today, we're now being penalized, and it looks like we're asking for something that we wouldn't be otherwise entitled to. That being said, it's integral to the architecture of the house, and excluding it, what are we going to create? A vacant space where this garage was, and there's a house above it, where you're forcing a lot more construction activity to just take the existing house up. We would have to restructurally do it. I'm sure anything is possible in the world, but that was never the intent of the applicant, is to reconfigure the existing house to accommodate this lift.
Any other questions for?
Yeah, I just want to be clear that when the house was built, it was FEMA compliant.
That is correct.
And it remains FEMA compliant.
No.
It is only by changing, by renovating more than 50% of its current value, that requires
it depends what
new FEMA.
It depends what you determine FEMA compliant is. It is not required to be elevated to current FEMA standards. That's very different than being FEMA compliant, because FEMA compliance the lens for that is what do current elevation and design requirements say the house should be elevated to be flood-proof and subject to positive elevation. It does not comply with those standards. There is nothing under
Right,
the
but it
FEMA.
doesn't require those standards unless there is this 50%.
It is not required to be raised to FEMA.
Right.
It is not conforming with respect to that.
Right, I understand that, but is the 50% increase, that's the trip line for the new regulations, the new FEMA requirements?
That is correct, and we are voluntarily agreeing to that rather than a ratcheting up over a year, decades, 5 years, whatever it is. I don't think that's a bad thing, personally. FEMA is not an arbitrary statute. It was based on scientific evidence on how do we flood-proof our communities. So I think that's a positive thing, is to voluntarily comply with FEMA. It makes a safer community. And we can disagree on whether you think that, but that's my personal feeling, is this body of law, these body of regulations were developed based on the best scientific information we had available.
Okay. Anybody have any questions?
No, I've heard enough.
I have to.
You good?
I've heard enough.
Okay. I think we're going to entertain a motion. I'm not interested in looking at a comparison of existing to new. I think we have enough knowledge on this board to do that. I don't think we need to spin wheels there, but I think we have, we've chewed this enough, quite a bit this evening. So, but as far as asking for a construction protocol, I think that is important. I think that you're raising a house, you're calling for pilings. What type of pilings? Because how are you going to drive those pilings when you have a house lifted up in the air? Those are things that all have to be looked at. Are they going to, how are you going to, if they're drawn as wood pilings, or are they wood pilings, or are they helical pilings? These are issues that I think have to be considered.
Well, I would ask the board's lead to submit something. I think it's, this has been worked out, and I don't think it's a major inconvenience to provide that to the board, and would have been happy to bring it with me tonight had this been raised in advance.
But Andy, there's got to be specifics in that too. It's not just whether
absolutely.
they're wood or helicals. How are we doing it? We retrenching from the far end, coming back in?
That's correct.
You got to see that. This is a very sensitive and hard to deal with site.
I'd like to make a motion
for construction.
Yeah, I'd like to make a motion to close the hearing, the record open for 2 weeks.
Could I actually have 30 days if I can beat it? I mean, I just don't know. I have to get an engineer, and I haven't spoken to the engineers on this. Just, I think I would like to say I could do it in 2 weeks, but I know I could, but I'm not.
30 days.
For submission of the construction protocol?
Right.
Jeff, brief.
Is that open for all purposes? Could I submit something within the 30 days?
If you want to submit something in writing, I would allow that.
So public comment as well?
And I would just ask the board, if council does submit something, I would want the opportunity to respond to it as well. So for, I don't know, 5 days after it's submitted, and if he gets it to me beforehand, I'm happy to respond immediately.
Jeff, how long will you take to submit your comments? Are you going to use the entire 30 days, or can you use, he needs only 5 days he's asked for to respond?
At least 5 days or more. I don't have any problem with giving time for this.
So are we still leaving it open for 30 days and saying?
I'd rather not lock in, if you don't mind, because there's a lot to process that happens. I don't want to set a time in terms of getting council the opportunity to respond. I'll make that happen.
Okay.
For 30 days, and I'll make it happen.
All right,
great.
Everything will happen within 30 days. That's what I'm hearing.
That's what I'm not sure. We have to make a motion on this. So are we leaving it open for 30 days and then plus
everybody
5
to
days for
respond?
comment?
No.
30 days.
Oh, 30 days
30
entirely.
days,
Okay.
everybody's going to do what they have. They're going to make it
For
work.
public comment, then.
We'll make it work. And I would like to just submit these copies of the permits that I referenced in my letter, just so the board has them.
I'm sorry, what are you submitting, Andy?
These are the permits that I referenced in my letter.
Oh,
It's the Cohen application, the original permit that was granted to Eugenia Sachs that constructed this in 2006. It's nothing new, it's just part of it.
Okay, so regarding Sands Capital Holding, 183 Marine Boulevard, Amagansett, Suffolk County, tax map 300-176-8-23.3. Like to make a motion to adjourn and leave the record open for 30 days.
To close the public hearing.
To close the public
Yeah,
hearing
not adjourn. Yeah, we'll close it.
And leave
and leave the record open for 30 days.
Second.
I concur.
I concur.
I concur. Thank you. Thanks, John.
All right, thank you.
Yeah, you can stand up there.
Okay.
All right, so we have an administrative application, Louse Investment LLC at 74 Louse Point Road, Spring, Suffolk, tax map number 300-83-4-7.7. And that's to demolish a residence and all existing structures on a property containing a bluff. Morgan?
Yeah, project description kind of says it all. There's no other proposal happening on the property at this point, so it would just be to demolish the existing improvements.
Nothing, no new project. That's
Not
it.
yet.
They're just demolished.
Not yet.
Just,
But that's what's in front of us now, is just to demolish.
So yeah, so they're just seeking a permit for the demolishment of the.
This is a 5,000.
I mean, I don't have a problem with that, because if they're demolishing it all, they're gonna have to come up to modern zoning, I would think.
mhm.
Yeah.
I guess my one question is, oh, I'm sorry.
No.
I mean, I think we know the size of the house, it's like 5,000, and there's other stuff on it. So it's a long flag lot, I believe, off of Louse Point Road. So I don't know, do we need like an actual deconstruction protocol? Because I don't know how many, getting all those dumpsters out and onto Louse Point Road. Obviously, if they want to demolish, they can demolish. I'm just curious sort of how, is this a property that would need an NRSP? This is.
If they were to, well, this is for an NRSP. They need an NRSP
to do, okay, so.
Yes.
It's,
Yeah, so we would definitely, require project limiting fencing, so to limit, the ground disturbance. It's pretty, can you pull up the aerial that I have in there? It's basically all lawn. So, there's not really much.
I'm just thinking about it getting, again, I don't know the story of how they, if there's an access easement that they're going down, and then it's not the narrowest part.
It is a shared driveway.
Okay, well, it's not the narrowest part of Louse Point Road, but it's a little.
They're still gonna have to take the
constrained.
dumpsters out, no matter what.
Exactly, I know, but it's.
So,
just
I mean,
curious.
I would be more concerned with, and I think the planning department is gonna cover that, would cover that, is the limiting fence
Right.
and protecting the natural habitat.
Environment, yeah.
So-
Yeah.
We're very restrictive on something like this anyway. It's just a demolition, right? So
Correct, yeah, so,
Basically, the limiting fence should cover our concerns. I'm
Right.
asking.
yeah, yes. We could have the project limiting fence go all the way along the property lines, or, at least along the existing driveway, so that way there's no intrusion
Yes.
into, other properties, and it would still be noticed for the 20 days, so all adjoining property owners would, receive notice that this is occurring.
I don't have a
And
problem
would,
with this.
they're, more than welcome to offer comments, and we usually try to work any feedback into admin permits when it's necessary.
Yeah, I just wanted to raise,
Mm-hmm.
thank
And
you.
you said there'd be something else coming?
No, I know.
Oh, okay.
There's
You
no
didn't-
other
oh, all
application
right,
for this
all right.
property, and just,
Not a
this is
CPF
just a
though,
demo.
No, I mean, not right, we don't know that
We are
there's
not
nothing
aware of
coming.
any
Right.
other plans on this property at this point.
Okay, can we have a
Okay, can we
motion?
have okay. In the matter of the application of Louse Investment LLC, 74 Louse Point Road, Springs, Suffolk County, tax map number 4-7.7. I make a motion that it go administratively.
I'll second it.
Concur.
I concur.
I concur. Thank you. We next have Stephanie Pietromonaco at 100 DeForest Road, Unit 808, Montauk, Suffolk Tax Map number 300-32-1-1-244. And it's an as-built coverages exceed that what was approved. So this would be a modification. Is that it?
No, it's just they did
No,
not
yeah.
submit for a modification. This is
They're
just
trying to
for
get
the
a C of
certificate
O?
of occupancy, yes.
Hmm.
So the application history, that they had an approval, I don't know off the top of my head the year, I think I put it in the memo. 2022, to replace the existing unit and, with the accessory structures. They were back in front of you guys more recently for a modification to just renovate the existing unit. And so that was what the modification was for, and that resulted in a slight decrease actually in the coverages. The as-built came in with the CO inspection, and they are 49 square feet over on building coverage and 5 and change hundred square feet over on total coverage. It does look like there was some additional gravel and slate patios constructed.
Sorry, did you say 500 square feet over?
Yeah, I don't the exact number. I don't know off the top of my head. It's like five and change. So it's all so there was additional gravel areas. It's essentially 100% coverage on this property now. The existing is 2,038 square feet, and the actual lot area is 1,987 square feet of this parcel. So, and I think that it's over like that because there's some that are actually off the property line, which wouldn't qualify for a certificate of occupancy in front of the building department. So that is something that would definitely need to be remedied before a CO is issued. Otherwise, it looks like essentially all area that wasn't originally proposed to be covered now has like gravel or slate patios on it.
So they got their approval, they came in and got a modification, but then went and did these slate patios that were not on the original plan from us.
Correct.
How much was the approval for originally?
The proposed total lot coverage was 1,460.
500
Yeah, 462 square feet.
Wasn't on the original, she
Yeah,
said.
Wait, I'm sorry, could you repeat that?
1,462 square feet was
what?
proposed with the modification.
Proposed total coverage.
Total coverage, yes.
And now it's almost 2,000, well, you said 500 over.
It's over 2,000.
Yeah, so they've gone up over 500 feet.
So what are we being asked to do?
The request was for a certificate of occupancy.
Yeah,
But they are exceeding a coverage.
that wasn't approved.
So the board,
Asking us to give them permission
but there,
to do what we didn't want them to do, above and beyond what they were approved for.
So
why would we say yes to that?
It was, it's just
Why would
the as-built changes. It was a determination from the board. So the board has the right to, say, no, you're not, you don't qualify for.
Yeah, no, that's what I mean. I'm
occupancy.
not questioning
And then,
you. I'm
we'd
thinking out
probably
loud.
advise the applicant to submit for a modification, and then the board would be able to make an.
Or to conform to the,
Why wouldn't they just conform to what was
Most of the
approved?
changes, was it mostly?
It was all slate.
creating the gravel?
It was like all gravel and slate patio, yeah.
Why
And
can't they
the
remove
driveway
that?
was slightly larger.
The slate patio though,
It's,
to me, it looks like it's mostly this gravel that was.
there's some, this,
slate patio up there.
Yeah, the
So it's a bunch of impervious surfaces.
Mrs. Morgan, I had thought if they moved the gravel areas, wouldn't they be within only like 49 square feet of what the prior approval was?
I don't know the exact area off the top of my head of
Okay.
what that would be reduced
Well,
to.
So can we
Well, you
find
said
that out?
so you
or
said the
well?
building coverage was 49.
Gravel?
Yeah, the 40,
It sounds like it's more than that, though.
The building coverage was 49 square feet.
if they remove the gravel, it would be closer
Yes.
to what was approved. I don't know if
Well,
it
yeah.
would comply, but it would be
And if they
closer.
move 200.
But I remember
it'd be
this
that much
one,
more
we
close.
were very concerned here because we were up against the wetlands and we were
Right.
concerned about
Mm-hmm.
what was happening here. And we gave the approval based on the fact that the condition of the trailer park is that everything is 100% cleared. If an existing trailer was there, we'd give them a right to come back in. At no point did we discuss an additional 500 feet, which I'm sure would have been of concern for all of us here because at that time, the wetlands was our major concern for this. The Trailers Park speaks for itself. A lot of repairs get done because they pre-existed. To me, this is certainly a bridge too far on this one.
Absolutely.
I agree with you.
I agree.
So we're asking for a C of O request or?
So the document that's prepared for this, would our department prepare a memo to the building department just saying that it doesn't comply with this, or would it be a formal like thing written by, formal resolution written saying that?
Well, the board votes on it,
Okay.
and then it should be your letter, but we could.
Well, we're saying no to, we're saying
Prepare a
no
memo
to the
to the building
CBO,
department.
and we're actually saying to
It's
be in
just that they're not inclined to change the prior decision. I don't know that it needs a motion. I think it's just that you're not.
I think so. I think a letter needs to go to them saying they're not in
There has
compliance.
to be some communication.
So, I mean, our department, we usually, typically the practice is when something does or doesn't, qualify for a CO, we write a memo to the building department saying if it does or doesn't, and if it doesn't, why it doesn't. So we could do that in this situation, and that would also be routed to the applicant, so that they are aware of that.
I think a letter needs to go out to
Okay.
them and say.
Yeah.
Thank you.
That would obviously put into the
This is a
board's
no for me, yeah.
Definitely a no.
We have an extension of time Seabass Acquisitions LLC at 63 Shipwreck Drive, Amagansett, Suffolk Tax Map number 300-152-2-8.33 and 8.34. What, do we know what it
Sounds familiar.
has?
They haven't done anything.
Oh, has anything been done yet?
The original approval was from 2000.
Oh, they haven't been initiated.
It was from 2015, and they still have not started work on the project.
So it's an unimproved property
Correct,
currently?
yeah, it's on Shipwreck in Amagansett.
So nothing's been initiated yet. Everything's the same.
And
They're just trying to keep their
changed, yeah.
approval
15, so
alive,
we're
that's
at
all.
10
All right,
years.
can we entertain a motion?
Yep. In the matter of Stephanie Petrum Monaco, I'm sorry, no, excuse me. In the matter of Seabass Acquisitions LLC, 63 Shipwreck Drive, Amagansett, Suffolk County Tax Map 300-152-2-8.33 and 8.34, make a motion to approve the extension of time.
Second.
Concur.
Concur.
Concur, thank you. We have draft minutes of May 6th and May 13th.
I'd like to make a motion to approve the draft minutes from Tuesday, May 16th, 2025 for the zoning board of, East Hampton Town Zoning Board of Appeals.
I'll second it.
Concur.
Concur.
And I'd like to make a motion to approve the draft minutes of Tuesday, May 13th, 2025 for the East Hampton Town Zoning Board of Appeals.
I'll second it again.
I'll
Concur.
Concur. Thank you. We have resolutions, Susan and Gross and Adam Cohen at 37 Driftwood Lane, Springs, Suffolk Tax Map number 300-24-7-24.
The purpose of this application was to allow the building height to remain 29 feet where the maximum permitted building height is 25, and to allow air conditioning units to remain within the side yard setbacks.
I have a comment.
On this? Oh.
Yeah, well, is that the determination?
Yeah.
Okay. did
Actually,
he
the
update the fact that Ryan was not in attendance?
Yes.
It got
He
changed.
Yeah, it got
changed.
That was the only
I didn't know if he
change.
changed.
That was the only
Updating the
change.
planner.
Yeah, okay.
Yep.
I believe the vote was 4-1 on, I'm sorry, we had a unanimous approval on the height, and member Mehring dissented on the
Air conditioner.
side yard lot line.
Yep.
So I'd like to, everybody good? I'd like to make a motion in the matter of Susan Gross and Adam Cohen, 37 Driftwood Lane, Springs, Suffolk County Tax Map number 300-24-7-24. I'd like to make a motion to approve the determination as written.
I'll second it.
Concur.
Concur.
Concur, thank you. We have Christopher Leonard at 406 Old Montauk Highway, Montauk, Suffolk Tax Map number 300-22-1-3.2.
Okay, well, you remember this, this was the pad, the concrete pad and the fencing and the clearing. This ultimately was an approval, 4-1. Everyone approved it but me. I was a denial on it. So I'd like to make a motion on Christopher Leonard at 4060 Montauk Highway, Montauk, tax map 300-22-1-3.2, to approve the resolution and the determination is written.
Do I have a second?
Second. Sorry.
Concur.
I concur.
He concurred. I wasn't.
Concur, thank you.
I was sitting on the bench too long.
We have Jerome Cangelosi at 77 Westlake Drive in Montauk, Suffolk, tax map number 300-28-3-54.
Okay, so.
This one required a change as well.
Oh, minor
So
change.
the edit is at the top of page 3, and it's the addition of the language on the eastern side of the dwelling. A portion of the driveway was reduced and replaced with the encroaching slate patio. So that was the only change in this one, that language on the top of page 3.
Okay. All right, does everybody remember this one?
Yes.
It was minor variances for the patio. For Jerome Cangelosi, 77 Westlake Drive in Montauk, tax map 300-28-3-54. Make a motion to approve the determination as written.
Second.
Concur.
Concur.
I wasn't present, so John, you can concur.
I concur.
Thank you. Next, we have 46 Hampton Lane LLC and William T. Russell, 46 and 50 Hampton Lane, Amagansett, of tax map number 300-174-7-13 and 14.
Okay. So will recall, because we heard this not that long ago, this involves the two contiguous lots, and the application was to install what's known as a Coltech drainage system on the let's see, it was on 46, right close to the property line on 50. It required one wetland variance. We all agreed that this was a very unique application, and we also, it was unanimous approval. So we're good on that? Yeah, we're good. Okay, so in the matter of 46 Hampton Lane LLC and William T. Russell, 46 and 50 Hampton Lane, Amagansett, Suffolk County Tax Map 300-174-7-13 and 14, make a motion to approve the resolution as written.
Seconded.
I concur.
Concur. Thank you. Vice Chair.
I would like to make a motion to adjourn the Zoning Board of Appeals on May 20th, 2025 at 9:40 PM.
I'll second it.
Concur.
Concur.
Concur.